the ice and fire demon god of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, The Injured Professor Snape. Although she and Senior Aluoa had only met for the second time, she couldn't help asking about the wandless casting of the freezing spell, because of her desire to cast it. Hearing this, Lin En was a little surprised. Recalling the day when he sensed Irina's magic aura at platform 9, he felt the strong fluctuations of ice element magic, and he understood. It seems that Irina also has a strong affinity for an element like himself. This can be seen from the freezing spell that Irina cast silently when fighting the giant monster yesterday. So, wandless casting is not difficult, as long as you. Lin En told Irina his experience of wandless casting in brief words. If it were a year ago, he might have kept wandless casting as his trump card, but now he has more and more powerful trump cards, and the ability of wandless casting has become his regular means of fighting. In this case, he naturally doesn't need to hide it from Irina. After receiving Lin En's guidance, Irina felt that she had suddenly become enlightened. She said gratefully again, "Thank you for your guidance, Senior Aluoa." Irina is very grateful. Lin En shook his head and said, "Practice is up to the individual. If you can practice wandless spell casting, it is your own ability. If there is nothing else, I will go back first." Lin En did not stay here for long, but returned to Hogwarts Castle. Before Halloween, he completed the enchantment of the Desert Eagle and its bullets, and in the next 6 months, it was time to put the matter of refining more forbidden magic fire on the agenda. Time passed quickly, and Merlin's socks changed from black silk to white silk. The surroundings of Hogwarts Castle were all white, and the whole earth showed a white hue. The weather was getting colder, especially after entering November. Even the surface of the Black Lake was covered with a layer of thick ice as hard as quenched steel. Every morning, Hagrid, the gamekeeper at Hogwarts, wrapped in a long moleskin coat, wearing rabbit fur gloves and huge beaver fur boots, defrosts the broomsticks on the Quidditch field. This is naturally because the Quidditch season at Hogwarts has begun. Harry, who joined the Gryffindor Quidditch team, will participate in his first Quidditch game in his life after several weeks of training, which makes him very nervous. Harry's love for Quidditch is unquestionable, which makes him not pay much attention to his usual studies for Quidditch training. If it weren't for Irina and Hermione, two college bullies, he would never have been able to complete so much homework. It is said that Hermione also recommended a book called Magical Quidditch to Harry, which made Harry know more about the history of Quidditch in the wizarding world. For example, it is best to be a little quiet when being a referee in a Quidditch game, otherwise it is very likely to disappear and then be found in the Sahara Desert a few months later. After the troll incident, Ron's attitude towards Hermione became much better, whether because of guilt or something else, which made the relationship between the four people much closer than before. The day before the Quidditch match, Irina, Hermione, Harry and Ron came to the yard outside during the break. Hermione used magic to conjure a handful of bright blue flames, which had almost no lethality, and could bring them warmth. While they were using the flames to keep warm, Professor Snape, wearing a black robe, came behind the four people like a mysterious big bat. He saw the book in Harry's hand. Professor Snape glanced at Harry's green eyes, and his lips moved, as if he wanted to say something, but when he moved his eyes down and saw Harry's signature Potter face, he looked a little disgusted. "What is that in your hand, Potter?" Harry showed the magical Quidditch in his hand. In his opinion, there was nothing wrong with this book. Professor Snape saw Harry took out the book, and he didn't even look at it, so he said without hesitation, "Books from the library are not allowed to be taken out of the school. Give it to me, and Gryffindor will be deducted 5 points." So, Professor Snape confiscated Harry's book, and Harry could only watch Professor Snape limping away with his book indignantly. Irina on the side spread her hands helplessly. "Who made you look so much like your father?" Exclamation mark. "If you look more like your mother, I'm afraid that Professor Snape would have prepared a whole set of books for you." "I don't know what happened to his leg," Harry said suddenly. Ron gloated. "Who cares? Anyway, I hope he hurts a lot." Suddenly, Hermione said. Just now when Professor Snape lifted his robe, I saw that there seemed to be a wound on his leg. The wound seemed to be bitten, but his wound was very large. Ordinary animals can't cause such a large wound. I think it looks a bit like the three-headed dog I saw at the beginning of the school. Irina continued. Hearing this, Harry and Ron immediately looked at the two. Hermione suggested, why don't we go and check it out at night to see what's going on? After the troll incident, Hermione seemed less resistant to breaking school rules. In the past 2 months, Irina had taken Hermione to sneak into the kitchen in the middle of the night to find food. As for how she knew where the kitchen was at Hogwarts, she said that a little badger from Hufflepuff told her. Of course, Hermione didn't know that Irina had never come into contact with the little wizards of Hufflepuff College from beginning to end, and Hufflepuff would never tell the secret of the kitchen to people from other colleges. At night, the Gryffindor common room was noisy. Irina and Hermione checked Harry and Ron's homework respectively. To be honest, Irina felt more and more like a nanny. After checking the homework, the four of them took action immediately. Harry suggested going to the staff lounge in the name of getting back the books. As long as there were other professors around, Professor Snape would naturally not be able to cause trouble for them without any evidence. So, Harry quickly went downstairs to the staff room and knocked on the door, while Irina and the other two hid behind the door and peeked. Harry knocked on the door several times in succession, but there was no response from inside. Helplessly, Harry had to quietly push the door open a crack and observe the scene inside. The scene in the room shocked Harry. At this time, there were only Snape and Filch in the staff room. Snape lifted his bat-wing-like black robe, revealing a bloody and mangled leg, and Filch handed him a bandage. Damn it, Snape said irritably, how can you stare at 3 heads at the same time? Chapter 52 My flying broom was broken into pieces by the Homping Willow. Just when Harry was about to continue reading, Professor Snape found him. Potter. Professor Snape said angrily. His face was about to be twisted with anger. He put down his black robe to cover his injuries. Professor, I wonder if I can get my book back. Harry tried to use the excuse he had thought of before to defend himself. Professor Snape roared, get out. Get out. Professor Snape looked very scary at this moment. Harry felt that, if he retreated without knowing the time, Gryffindor's house points would probably be cleared. Harry hurriedly left the room and closed the door with his backhand. After doing this, he breathed a sigh of relief and looked at his friends behind him. How is it? Did you see it? Harry asked. Irina nodded. Yeah, from Professor Snape's wounds and his words, his injuries were caused by the three-headed dog. Although Irina knew the truth of the matter, the clues in the hands of her friends were limited, and she couldn't directly release the god's perspective. So, I can only ask C to teach you. Do you know what this means? Harry held his breath. On Halloween night, Ron and I saw him heading in the direction of the three-headed dog. Obviously, they were looking for what the three-headed dog was guarding. Harry swore, I bet my broomstick, that he let the troll in to divert people's attention. Well, so your broomstick was broken by the Homping Willow 2 years later. Don't raise flags randomly. Irina blinked innocently. Harry frowned, and he said firmly, what do you mean by raising flags randomly? Irina, just tell me, if my analysis is wrong. I tell you, if the troll was not let in by Snape, my Nimbus 2000 would be broken by the Homping Willow. It's not that I don't want to help you, it's that you are really hopeless. Irina looked at him helplessly, as if she saw an old general with flags on his back on the stage. Hermione wanted to refute Harry. In her opinion, the professor of Hogwarts would not be a bad person at least. But there was nothing wrong with Harry's analysis. In addition, Harry swore with his own Nimbus 2000, which made Hermione speechless. The next day, early in the morning, on the day of the Quidditch match, the weather was clear and cold. At this time, there were nearly 5 hours before the official start of the Quidditch match, so the Quidditch field was still very deserted. Except for Hagrid, who was defrosting the flying broom, there was no one. However, after Hagrid defrosted and left, an uninvited guest came here before everyone else. This person was Lin. Lin was holding a metal block the size of a Rubik's Cube in his hand. After he used his wand to put a layer of disillusionment on himself, he quickly walked towards the direction of the teacher's seat in the audience. Although Lin's relationship with Professor Snape in Hogwarts Castle was not very good, it could only be said to be an ordinary teacher-student relationship, but Professor Snape was his dean after all, and he did not want his dean to be wronged. Therefore, Quirrell should bear the consequences of his mischief. The metal block in Lin En's hand is an all-chemical bomb that can be triggered remotely, and he intends to stick it on the bottom of Quirrell's chair in order not to hurt other professors or classmates. When making this all-chemical bomb, Lin En used a special all-chemical array to limit its explosion range. When this all-chemical bomb is triggered, there will be an invisible magic shield covering the all-chemical bomb within a radius of 1 meter, and the power of the all-chemical bomb after the explosion will be limited by this magic shield. In other words, if this all-chemical bomb explodes, only Quirrell will be injured. Well, a world where only Quirrell is injured is born. Lin En firmly fixed the all-chemical bomb under the chair arranged for Quirrell, and nodded with satisfaction. At this time, someone may say that, since Lin En wants to avoid Voldemort, why does he still want to get involved in this matter? You know, from the perspective of Lin En's identity, he can avoid it for a while but not forever. Since he will have to fight Voldemort sooner or later, it is better to stand in the opposite camp early and take the initiative to attack while everything is still under control. Quirrell is Voldemort's carrier. If he is injured, Voldemort will not be able to cause trouble for at least a period of time, and this period will be the best period for Lin En to grow. Lin En's biggest hope is to refine the forbidden magic fire that can cover a room before the end of the school year, so that even if Voldemort leaves Quirrell's body, he will have a certain way to deal with it. After completing these, Lin En quickly returned to the castle and pretended that he had never left the castle. In Hogwarts Castle, a group of young wizards were enjoying their breakfast, but at this time, Harry was so nervous about the upcoming Quidditch game that he couldn't eat. It's just a Quidditch game, Harry, what's there to worry about? It's not the owl's exam that will start later, Irina said generously. She looked very relaxed. After all, when she was taking the college entrance examination, she ate delicious food on the day of the exam and even had the leisure to play 3 games. In her opinion, Quidditch games are just small events. There is no need to be nervous. After all, this is not the Quidditch World Cup. It is just a group of children fighting. Harry looked at her with resentment. Irina, don't talk without any pain in your waist. If you have the ability, go ahead. Irina shrugged. I can go, but do you dare to let me go? I dare not. Harry lowered his head and forced a sausage into his mouth. Soon, the time came to 11 o'clock. The teachers and students of the entire Hogwarts castle came to the audience seats of the Quidditch stadium. These seats were very high and almost half empty, but sometimes it was still difficult to see the game situation. In the Gryffindor camp, Irina led Hermione to the highest row, whereon Neville, Seamus and others were already cheering. They used a bedsheet stained by mice to draw a huge banner with the words Potter must win written on it. Dean, who is good at painting, also drew a big Gryffindor lion underneath. Irina stayed away from the bedsheet with some disgust. An old man in his 40s actually wet the bed. Although he was in the form of mouse, it was still chilling. Hermione didn't know this. She cast a clever magic on the bedsheet, making the paint on the banner flash different colors. On the other side, Lin also came to the Slytherin camp. As Malfoy's roommate and senior, the Malfoy trio came early to save a seat for Lin. Thank you. Lin nodded slightly to Malfoy. Welcome everyone to join our book club. The author will broadcast the legacy of Hogwarts from time to time. Chapter 53. Keeluo is making trouble. When Lin sat down in the seat that Malfoy had reserved for him, the Quidditch match had already begun. The players of the Gryffindor and Slytherin Quidditch teams gathered around Madam Hooch, the referee. After hearing Madam Hooch's reminder, they all rode on their broomsticks. Harry rode on his Nimbus 2000, which was the best among all the broomsticks in the field. 15 broomsticks took off into the air and were distributed in various locations on the Quidditch field. The quaffle was immediately grabbed by Angelina Johnson from Gryffindor. That girl is such an excellent chaser, and she is also very charming. Lee Jordan, the little wizard from Gryffindor who was the commentator of the match, stood in the commentary booth and shouted loudly, "Jordan!" Professor McGonagall, who was standing next to Lee Jordan, shouted immediately, "I'm sorry, Professor." Lee Jordan shrank his neck and started explaining normally. She was really running all the way up there and made a beautiful pass to Alicia Spinett. She was a talent discovered by Oliver Wood and was just a substitute last year. The ball was passed to Johnson again, and then, oops, the Slytherin team snatched the quaffle, and Slytherin captain Marcus Flint got the quaffle and ran away. Flint flew like an eagle up there. He was going to score. No, Gryffindor goalkeeper Wood made a beautiful move and intercepted the ball. Lee Jordan explained hard, and the atmosphere on the scene became more and more excited under this passionate explanation. At this time, the one holding the quaffle on the court was Katie Bell, a chaser of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. She flew around Flint swiftly, trying to find her chance to shoot. But just then, a bludger hit Katie Bell in the back of the head, causing her quaffle to be snatched away by Slytherin Quidditch's Adrian Hughes, who raced towards the goalpost, but was knocked down by another bludger. At this point, Fred pushed the bludger aside, and Gryffindor Quidditch's Angelina Johnson reclaimed the quaffle, and with no resistance in front of her, she raced towards the Slytherin goalpost, dodging a bludger, and dribbling past Slytherin Quidditch's goalkeeper, Blodge, and sending the quaffle into the goalpost. Madam Hooch blew her whistle, announcing that Gryffindor had scored. This caused the Gryffindor Lions to cheer. The Lions' cheers echoed in the cold air, mixed with the roars and groans of the snakes. After Angelina Johnson scored for Gryffindor, Harry happily turned over with his Nimbus 2000 to express his joy. As the seeker of the Gryffindor Quidditch team, Harry could fish in the air without restraint. After all, he had nothing to do before the trace of the golden snitch appeared. In the commentary booth, Lee Jordan did not stop commenting because of a goal. His emotions seemed to be more excited. Slytherin team got the ball. Chaser Sepp ducked to avoid two bludgers, and then avoided the Weasley brothers and the pursuer Bell, and ran towards. Wait, what is that? Is that the golden snitch? Lee Jordan paused for a moment, and then burst into more intense emotions. A golden light flew past the left ear of Adrian Sepp, the chaser of the Slytherin Quidditch team, and flew around the Quidditch game. The appearance of the golden snitch immediately set off the atmosphere of the entire stadium. Students from all colleges cheered for their own or the seekers of the side they supported. As a seeker, Harry was the first to see the golden snitch. He controlled the Nimbus 2000 to dive and chased after the golden light. Not far away, Terrence Higgs, the seeker of the Slytherin Quidditch team, also saw the golden snitch. He and Harry flew almost side by side in the direction of the golden snitch. At this tense moment, the other players of the Quidditch team seemed to have forgotten what they should do. They hovered in the air and watched the fight between Harry and Higgs. Even though Higgs was more experienced, Harry's broom was the Nimbus 2000, which had already opened up a large gap in hardware. At this time, Harry could already see the small round ball of the golden snitch with its wings fluttering, and he accelerated again. But at this moment, the Slytherin Quidditch team showed their unsportsmanlike tradition. Their captain, Marcus Flint, deliberately controlled the flying broom to hit Harry, knocking Harry off the direction. This extremely illegal behavior made Flint reprimanded by Madam Hooch, and the Gryffindor Lions below surrounded Flint's mother and gave her a 360-degree greeting. Madam Hooch, the referee, ordered the Gryffindor team to take a free kick in front of the goalpost, but even so, the golden snitch had already lost its trace again in the chaos. On the top stand of the Gryffindor camp, Dean Thomas, who was born an ordinary person, shouted loudly, "Send him off. Referee. Red card." Ron on the side reminded, "This is not football, Dean. In Quidditch games, you can't send people off. By the way, what is a red card?" When Dean explained to Ron what a red card was, Lee Jordan, a Gryffindor, was also furious. So, after that obvious and despicable cheating just now, Lee Jordan said angrily, "Jordan." But Professor McGonagall, who was always fair, warned him. Lee Jordan changed his words. "I mean, after that public and disgusting foul just now." Professor McGonagall roared in a low voice, "Jordan, I remind you." Lee Jordan had to pause helplessly, and after organizing his words, he spoke again. Okay. Flint almost killed the Gryffindor team's seeker. I believe that this kind of thing will happen to everyone, so Gryffindor team will take a free kick." Although he changed his words twice in a row, Lee Jordan's sarcastic words still made Irina in the stands give a thumbs up. Just as the game continued, Harry suddenly changed. After Harry controlled the Nimbus 2000 to avoid a bludger, his broom suddenly rioted. The broom shook rapidly, as if trying to throw Harry off. Harry held the broom handle tightly with both hands, and clamped the flying broom tightly with his knees. He had never been so scared before. At the same time, two figures suddenly stood up in the Gryffindor camp and the Slytherin camp, and their eyes were looking towards the teacher's seat at the same time. Quirrell started to act up. This thought appeared in the minds of Lin and Irina at the same time. Chapter 54. Quirrell exploded. At this time, on the Quidditch field, Harry's flying broom was twitching and twisting wildly, gradually taking Harry away from the field. I don't know what Harry wants to do, Hagrid muttered in the stands, watching carefully through the telescope. If I didn't know him so well, I would think he couldn't control his broom. But he can't. Hagrid didn't understand the seriousness of the matter. He just thought Harry was using some special tactics. But suddenly, everyone in the stands looked at Harry and saw that Harry's Nimbus 2000 began to roll and tumble, which made him barely support himself from falling. Then, Nimbus 2000 twisted wildly again, which threw Harry off. At this critical moment, Harry only used one hand to grab the broom handle and hung in the air dangerously. Was there something wrong with the broom when Flint hit him just now? Seamus whispered in the stands. Impossible, said Hagrid, his voice trembling slightly. Nothing can interfere with a flying broom, except powerful dark magic. It is impossible for a child to cast such magic on the Nimbus 2000. Hagrid's words seemed to lead Hermione's thinking in the right direction. After listening to Hagrid's words, Hermione grabbed Hagrid's telescope. She did not look up at Harry, but began to look at the crowd anxiously. What are you doing? Ron said with a dead look on his face. Harry's current state almost made the Gryffindor team lose the possibility of winning. I guessed it a long time ago, Hermione panted. It's Professor Snape. Look. Ron grabbed the telescope. Professor Snape stood in the middle of the stands opposite them. He stared at Harry and muttered silently. He's doing bad things. He cursed the flying broom. Hermione said to Ron and Irina. Ron was so anxious that he jumped up and down. What should we do? Watch me. As Hermione said, she turned around and planned to walk towards the teacher's seat. But at this moment, Irina stopped her and said, wait, Hermione, look. As she said that, Irina turned Hermione's head and asked Hermione to look in the direction of Quirrell. That's Professor Quirrell? Hermione said in disbelief. In her impression, Quirrell was just a person who stuttered and had no courage even in class. He didn't seem like someone who would use black magic on Harry. What's more, Quirrell and Harry had no grudges, unlike Professor Snape who was targeting Harry on weekdays. Irina nodded and said, yes, it's not just Professor Snape. Quirrell is also looking directly at Harry, and he seems to be chanting some spell. But before Irina finished her analysis, Ron, who saw Quirrell through a telescope, said loudly, I know, it was Professor Snape who was casting black magic on Harry, and the timid Quirrell could only silently cast a counter spell to save Harry. Quirrell, who silently dedicated himself to his students. What a good person he is. Hearing this, Irina slapped her forehead. Great analysis. Don't analyze it again next time. Irina patted Ron's shoulder and said earnestly, looking at Hermione who believed Ron's analysis and was about to set out to stop Professor Snape. Irina said, Hermione, let me do it. My magic level is higher. As she said that, Irina squeezed towards the teacher's seat before Hermione. Irina planned to stop Professor Snape on the pretext of attacking Quirrell to interrupt the spell. Alas, my dear Professor Snape, I can only help you here. Irina sighed. She struggled to pass through the crowd and came not far from Professor Snape and Quirrell. She quietly pulled out her wand and prepared to cast a spell. At the same time, more than 100 meters away, in the Slytherin camp, Lin looked far away in the direction of the teacher's seat, holding a piece of metal in his hand, and as he injected the magic power in his body into the metal block in his hand, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. 3, 2, 1, go. Snap. Lin En counted down softly, and after the last second of the countdown, he snapped his fingers vigorously. Bang. In the teacher's seat, the alchemical bomb under Quirrell's seat received the magic signal and exploded immediately. The terrifying flame soared up, swallowing Quirrell with the seat, and the huge shock wave also hit Quirrell's butt hard, pushing Quirrell upwards. A violent explosion occurred, but the strange thing was that the explosion seemed to be huge, but its scope was only the part where Quirrell was. A few meters away, Irina, who had been harboring evil intentions, was frightened by the violent explosion and staggered immediately, almost falling to the ground. Ouch. Ouch. Under this terrifying shockwave, Quirrell was blown up high, and after flying upwards for more than 10 meters, he fell headfirst onto the lawn of the Quidditch field. In the teacher's seat, Irina looked at Quirrell's miserable state and patted her not so full chest in fear. Suddenly, she seemed to think of something, and cast her eyes towards the Slytherin camp. This kind of magic bomb with terrifying power, but limited range can probably only be made by highly skilled alchemists. Thinking back to the metal blocks surrounding senior roll that day, Irina had to associate this explosion with that senior roll. Is this a coincidence, or? Irina thought with some doubts, but soon, her eyes became resentful. She was really scared by this sudden explosion. Woo, this is mental damage compensation, I'm serious. Above the lawn of the Quidditch field, thanks to Professor McGonagall, after seeing the danger of her colleagues, she cast a timely floating spell to suspend Quirrell in the air. Otherwise Quirrell would be smashed headfirst and his brain would burst, and even magic couldn't save it. Quirrell was trembling with fear. His eyes, which seemed to be terrified, were filled with a sinister light. Quirrell's butt was already bloody and mangled by the explosion. Fortunately, Professor McGonagall arrived in time and ordered several Gryffindor students not far away to take Quirrell to the school hospital. Quirrell was lifted up by several Gryffindor students using a levitation spell. Blood was flowing from his butt and legs. The bones in his legs were almost shattered. He had to take bone spirit to heal them. His lungs were also hit hard by the shockwave. Blood flowed from the corners of his mouth. He glanced at the stands with a sinister look, trying to find the culprit, but he was destined to find nothing. You useless thing, the alchemical product is right under your butt, and you didn't even notice it. In Quirrell's mind, Voldemort was also scolding him, accusing him of being useless. At the same time, the Slytherin camp, Malfoy looked at Quirrell who was blown away and said bluntly, "Fuck." Quirrell exploded. It is suspected that the quintessence of the Chinese nation has been leaked. Lin, who did something bad, but had no guilt, glanced at him and thought to himself, woohoo, there are no more recommendations for the rest of the book. I can only rely on your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. Then let me take the love potion. The fact that Quirrell was blown away by the alchemical bomb did not affect the progress of the Quidditch game. It was a serious matter for a Hogwarts professor to be openly attacked, but it was not enough for the wizards to interrupt an ongoing Quidditch game. In the teacher's seat, Professor Snape stopped reciting the counterspell. He kept scanning the surroundings to check for any possible crisis. In Professor Snape's view, the explosion of the alchemical bomb was a long-planned attack. Although the target of the attack was not a good thing, this attack without any clues was a major threat to Hogwarts. After all, Quirrell was attacked today, and tomorrow any professor or student could be attacked. Professor Snape's eyes were full of vigilance. He even left the teacher's seat and kept patrolling in the stands to perform the duties of a professor. In the Gryffindor camp, Hermione looked at Irina in disbelief. Are you crazy? You actually attacked the professor with an explosive spell. And it was Professor Snape who was chanting the evil spell. Why did you attack Professor Quirrell? Hermione did not see clearly what happened in the teacher's seat, but she thought of Irina's actions and the coincidence of the explosion. So she had to think that all this was done by Irina. Irina blinked her big ice blue eyes innocently. Hermione, this is not my doing. When I just got there, Quirrell exploded. I was shocked. Irina said, aggrieved. Hermione also realized that she had misunderstood Irina. She quickly hugged Irina and apologized repeatedly. On the Quidditch field, the Nimbus 2000, which had regained control, was manipulated by Harry to dive towards the ground, and he almost fell to the ground. People saw Harry covering his mouth with his hands, as if he was going to vomit. Harry crawled on all fours like a dog, coughed hard, and a golden snitch appeared in his palm. I caught the snitch. Harry raised the snitch high and waved it vigorously. Oh, I wonder if the snitch will be used again in the future. Irina turned her head subconsciously. This is really an imported product. Just like that, the Quidditch game ended in chaos. Even after 20 minutes, Flint, the captain of the Slytherin Quidditch team, was still shouting indignantly. He didn't catch the snitch, he almost swallowed it. In Flint's opinion, how could a seeker catch the snitch with his mouth? Exclamation mark. However, Flint's protest did not change the final result. After all, Harry's behavior did not violate any regulations. Amid the cheers of Gryffindor, commentator Lee Jordan announced that Gryffindor won by 170 points to 60 points, which brought the atmosphere to the extreme. Some were happy and some were sad. While the little lions cheered and celebrated, the little snakes felt very frustrated. But all this had nothing to do with Lin En. After Quirrell exploded as he had planned, he got up and left the scene, returning to Hogwarts Castle to prepare for the forbidden magic fire. It was a rare period of leisure time without interruption, so Lin En naturally wanted to make use of it. Outside Hogwarts Castle, Hagrid's hut, Irina, Hermione, Ron, and Harry, who had finished the game, came to Hagrid's hut together. The owner of the hut, Rubius Hagrid, was making a cup of strong tea for Harry. It must have been Snape. Ron said to Harry and Hagrid, "We all saw it. He was casting a spell on your broomstick, muttering to himself, and staring at you. Fortunately, Professor Quirrell cast a counter spell for you, otherwise you would be in danger, Harry." Harry was a little surprised. What? But I saw Quirrell being blown away. Ron vowed, it must have been Snape. After he found out that Professor Quirrell was casting a counter spell for you and hindering his work, he tried to kill Quirrell. Fortunately, Professor McGonagall was here, otherwise Professor Quirrell would have left us forever. Irina covered her face, and Snape had another bite of the blame. Hagrid didn't believe him. Nonsense. How could Snape do such a thing? He couldn't attack his colleagues and his students. Ron was anxious. What I said is absolutely true. If what I said is false, then let me eat chocolate and get aphrodisiac. Irina looked at him sympathetically. She felt that, when she looked at Harry and Ron, it was as if she was watching Farewell My Concubine on the stage. Irina quickly grabbed Ron, who was getting anxious. After exchanging glances with Hermione, she decided to let Hermione explain. Hermione said to Hagrid, "Hagrid, we found out something about Professor Snape. On Halloween, he seemed to want to pass through the three-headed dog, and the three-headed dog bit him. We think he wanted to steal what the three-headed dog was guarding." Irina continued, "Of course, it is not ruled out that Professor Snape was just on routine patrol and was attacked when passing by there, or was accidentally attacked by the three-headed dog while chasing the criminals." Harry and Ron looked at Irina in surprise. "Why are you still making excuses for Snape?" Exclamation mark. "Come on." Professor Dumbledore said that no one is allowed to enter the corridor on the right side of the 4th floor. How could Professor Snape go there if he was on normal patrol? Harry questioned. Irina explained, there are many little wizards in Gryffindor who go out at night. Maybe someone ran there during an adventure. If that's the case, then Professor Snape can still save our classmates' lives. Ron spread his hands, but it's impossible to think about it. Think about it, a guy as annoying as Snape probably wants us to die, so how could he come to save us? While several people were discussing fiercely, Hagrid put down the teapot in his hand heavily. The teapot hit the table, making a dull sound, attracting everyone's attention. "How do you know, Fluffy?" Hagrid asked. He looked a little panicked. Fluffy, as the gatekeeper of the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets guarding the Philosopher's Stone, would never leave that room on weekdays, but Harry and the others knew Fluffy, which clearly showed that they had gone to that room without permission and met the three-headed dog Fluffy. This made Hagrid a little panicked. The Philosopher's Stone was a top secret that could never be revealed to these little wizards in front of him. "Florn?" Irina, Hermione, Harry and Ron asked in unison. They looked at Hagrid, waiting for his answer. Chapter 56. Hagrid raised on Veritaserum. "Yeah, it's mine. I bought it from a Greek guy I met in the bar last year, and I lent it to Dumbledore to guard." Hagrid's big mouth kept chattering. "What?" Harry asked anxiously. Hermione and Ron glared at him, and Harry's question directly interrupted Hagrid's desire to speak. Okay, don't ask any more. That's an absolute secret, understand? Hagrid said rudely. He would never reveal the secret. Harry was not convinced, but Snape wanted to steal it. Nonsense. Hagrid glared at Harry. Snape is a professor at Hogwarts. He would never do such a thing. Hermione questioned. Then why did he want to kill Harry? What happened during the Quidditch game changed Hermione's view of Snape. She had already determined that Snape was the murderer, so naturally she was no longer willing to respect a person who wanted to kill her friend. If I see someone casting a curse, I can recognize it, Hagrid. I've read all about them in books. You have to keep in touch with them with your eyes, and Snape's eyes didn't blink. I saw it. Hermione tried to explain. I tell you, you're wrong. Hagrid said irritably. I don't know why Harry's broomstick behaved like that, but Snape would never want to kill a student. Now, listen to me, all four of you. You are interfering in things that have nothing to do with you, which is very dangerous. Forget the three-headed dog. Forget what it is guarding. This is between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Hagrid said seriously. Aha. Harry stood up. So it involves a man named Nicholas Flamel, right? On the side, Irina held her forehead speechlessly. Hagrid, you didn't grow up drinking truth serum? Exclamation mark. Irina thought so. I shouldn't have said it. I really shouldn't have let it slip. I really shouldn't have said it. Hagrid said in great annoyance. He was angry with himself. Hagrid was no longer willing to talk to Harry and the others. He rudely drove the four people out of his hut and didn't even take out the rock cakes that were always necessary in the past. On the way back to the castle, Hermione said firmly, since we already know that this matter is related to an old man named Nicholas Flamel, then we will start looking for information about Nicholas Flamel. Let's start from the library. Irina couldn't help but said, no, Hermione, I know who Nicholas Flamel is. Irina really didn't want her best friend to suffer for finding someone's information, so she had to use her own spoiler method. Hearing this, Harry, Ron and Hermione all turned their eyes to Irina. Irina paused and said, Nicholas Flamel is the most famous alchemist in France. He invented the Philosopher's Stone. Hermione asked, Irina, what is the Philosopher's Stone? In the original book, Hermione borrowed a book from the library a few weeks before the Christmas holiday, which recorded information about the Philosopher's Stone, but she has not had time to read the book in this timeline. Irina explained, this is recorded in a book in the library. Ancient alchemy involves the refining of the Philosopher's Stone, which is a magical substance with amazing functions. It can turn any metal into pure gold. It can also be used to make an elixir of life, making people who drink this potion immortal. Over the centuries, there have been many reports about the Philosopher's Stone, but the only Philosopher's Stone currently is the one made by Nicholas Flamel. Hermione suddenly realized, I understand, the three-headed dog must be guarding Mr. Nicholas Flamel's Philosopher's Stone. I dare say Nicholas Flamel asked Professor Dumbledore to keep it for him, because they are friends, and he knew that someone was plotting against the Philosopher's Stone, so he moved the Philosopher's Stone out of Gringotts. Irina nodded repeatedly. However, if Lin En was here, he would definitely refute it. After all, if Professor Dumbledore had not asked his master Nicholas Flamel to set up a trap with the Philosopher's Stone to lure Voldemort into the trap, I'm afraid the Philosopher's Stone would still be safely in France, and Voldemort would never dare to plot against Nicholas Flamel, the great alchemist. You know, Nicholas Flamel is not only a great alchemist, but also a Demon King level wizard. Even if Nicholas Flamel is more than 600 years old, he is definitely not something that a mere remnant of Voldemort can defeat. If that's the case, it makes sense that Snape wants to steal the Philosopher's Stone. No one can refuse immortality, Ron said. The four returned to the castle during the discussion. They unanimously decided to guard against Professor Snape. Of course, Irina's target was Quirrell, a wolf in sheep's clothing. A month passed quickly, and Christmas in mid-December was coming. In the past month, Lin refined more forbidden magic fires. Now his forbidden magic fires can fill half of the Slytherin dormitory. According to Lin's conservative estimate, before the end of the school year, he should be able to refine enough forbidden magic fires to fill the potion classroom. If these forbidden magic fires can be spread, it is probably no problem to cover the secret room guarding the Philosopher's Stone. On this morning, when Hogwarts Castle woke up from a dream, he found himself covered with several feet of snow. The beautiful snowflakes covered the burly castle with a thick fleece. Outside the castle, the Weirlight twins were using magic to control several snowballs, making them chase Quirrell around and finally explode fiercely on the back of Quirrell's head. Not far away, Irina silently prayed for the Weirlight twins, hoping that they would not let Voldemort, who was living in the back of Quirrell's head, hold a grudge against them. Hey, Lin, good morning. Just then, the Weirlight twins stopped playing with Quirrell with snowballs, and they waved in the direction of the castle gate. Lin walked over and said with a smile, "Are you still playing snowballs? How is your alchemy learning?" The Weirlight twins looked at each other, and George smiled and said, "Well, you underestimate us too much. We have read all the alchemy books you showed us, and we can complete the engraving of the simplest series alchemy array." Lin nodded slightly. Being able to say series, a word that does not belong to the wizarding world, it seems that the Weirlight twins have really studied the muggle electricity books he provided. At this time, Lin turned around and saw Irina not far away. "Senior Luo." Irina saw Lin appear and hurriedly greeted him. Fred said, "Hey, Lin, let me introduce you to this. This is Irina Lowell, a friend of our dear brother little Ronnie. But do you seem to know her?" Once again, we invite everyone to join our book club. The group number is 458,582,079 and the password is 1990. Welcome everyone to join our big family. In a few days, the author will hold a lucky draw in the group, and there will be physical gifts for everyone. Welcome everyone to join the group. Thank you for your support. Chapter 57. Damn Grenade. Lin En nodded slightly and looked at Irina. "How is your research on wandless spellcasting going?" Irina raised her left hand, and an ice blue beam flew out from her palm, turning the snowball in Fred's hand into an ice ball. "After you taught me the skills of wandless spellcasting that day, Senior Luo, I successfully used the wandless spells of freezing spell and clear water spell. In addition, I also studied the conversion techniques you taught me, and developed a snow making spell that was between clear water spell and freezing spell," Irina said. She waved her left hand again, and a lot of white snow condensed out of thin air and turned into an exquisite snowball in her hand. Irina handed the snowball to Fred, which made up for the loss of Fred's own snowball that turned into an ice ball. But unexpectedly, Fred took the snowball and threw it on Irina's face, then ran away laughing. This made Irina stunned. When Irina reacted, she wiped the snow off her face, and a hash appeared clearly on her forehead. "Fred, I'm sorry to have embarrassed you, Senior Luo. Senior Luo, I have some things to deal with. I'll leave first." Irina tried to keep her original smile. Smile, you must maintain your image." Irina screamed wildly in her heart. Lin nodded, indicating that she could do her own thing. Irina immediately drew her wand and chased in the direction of Fred. "Damn it, I can just give up my image." Irina waved her wand and 3 freezing spells broke through the air, freezing Fred, who was caught off guard in place. Not long after, Fred's ghostly howls came from afar. Lin smiled and shook his head, turned around and went back to the castle. On the other side, Irina stopped beating Fred after being persuaded by Harry and the other two. On the side, George laughed at Fred. "I was careless and didn't dodge," Fred said in annoyance, causing everyone to laugh. Not long after, George left with Fred, who was bruised and swollen, while Harry and the other two returned to the castle. On the day before the Christmas holiday, the hall had been decorated beautifully. The walls were covered with holly and mistletoe hanging eggs, and there were 12 towering Christmas trees standing around. Some of the trees were hung with sparkling icicles, while others were flickering with hundreds of candles. Harry and the others also saw the professors performing magic to decorate the hall. Professor Flitwick used his wand to spray strings of golden bubbles and hung them on the branches of the newly moved Christmas tree, while Professor McGonagall directed the senior students of the Transfiguration Club to perform transfiguration to decorate the hall. However, although most of the members of the Transfiguration Club were seniors in the 6th and 7th grades, Irina found that the senior student Raoul, who was only in the 2nd grade, was also standing among them. Lin waved her wand casually, and small Christmas trees were transformed and moved to where they should be by the levitation spell. With Lin's current magic power, the transformation magic of these Christmas trees can last until the end of the Christmas holiday. Lin's transformation efficiency is extremely high. One person is equivalent to 3 or 4 senior students. Under the command of Professor McGonagall, they only took more than 10 minutes to complete the transfiguration arrangement of the entire hall. Good days always come quickly. Christmas morning. After Lin woke up from the soft bed, he saw the gifts at the foot of the bed. To his surprise, there were 9 gifts here, 2 more than last year. Lin got out of bed with interest and unwrapped the first gift. This gift came from his mother Irina. Inside was an invisibility cloak and a letter with family matters. Although the invisibility cloak has a strong functionality in the wizarding world, its short validity period makes its sales not too high. After all, wizards who have money to buy the invisibility cloak can replace it with the disillusionment charm, and wizards who don't know the disillusionment charm probably can't afford the invisibility cloak. Therefore, compared with its powerful functionality, the existence of the invisibility cloak is more like a luxury. Of course, this invisible cloak can also be a good alchemical material for Lin. After reading her mother's letter, Lin continued to open the presents. This time, Lin opened the presents from Professors McGonagall, Flitwick and Snape. The Christmas gifts that professors gave to good students were mostly the same. For example, Professor McGonagall gave a more advanced transfiguration notes, Professor Flitwick still gave a set of wand maintenance kits, and Professor Snape gave a bottle of healing potion. After the 3 professors, it was the Christmas present from the Weir Light Winds. The Christmas present from the Weir Light Winds was a large jar of canary biscuits. With the help of Lin, they had come into contact with and learned alchemy in advance and invented many prank products in advance, and this jar of canary biscuits was one of them. However, Fred and George seemed to want to play a prank on Lin, and they did not tell her the special nature of this jar of canary biscuits. If it weren't for Lin's secret method that allowed him to see the alchemy array inside the canary biscuits, he would probably have eaten the can of canary biscuits as ordinary biscuits. I still need to learn a lesson. Lin smiled and shook his head and opened the next Christmas gift. After opening the gift, there was a hand-knitted black sweater with a big letter R on the chest of the sweater. Lin was very surprised that the sender of this Christmas gift was Mrs. Weirlie. You know, given the Weirlie family's disgust for Death Eaters, even if he was a good friend of the Weirlie twins, he was destined not to be truly recognized by the other party, just because of his identity as a descendant of Death Eaters, let alone let Mrs. Weirlie personally knit a sweater for him, a descendant of Death Eaters. Could it be that there is some factor that I don't know about that made her change her opinion of me? Lin looked at the sweater in his hand and thought. Behind the sweater was the shorthand quill given by Irving Foley. Is this a gift from Irina? Lin unwrapped the penultimate Christmas gift. This gift looked small and exquisite, and the sender was Irina, whom he had only met 3 times so far. Inside the package was a crystal ball. Of course, this was not the kind of crystal ball used in divination classes, but one of those ornamental crystal balls in the muggle world with patterns of snowflakes and little people. In addition to the crystal ball, there was also a letter from Irina, which expressed her gratitude to Lin for teaching her how to cast spells without a wand. Soon, Lin opened the last package, which was a Christmas gift from his teacher, Wallace and Green. But after opening the package, the contents inside made Lin dumbfounded. WTF. 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 Even the usually calm Lin could not hold his temper at this moment. 3 round pineapple-shaped objects were quietly lying in the package. WTF. Grenades. Chapter 58 Christmas Gifts and Christmas Dinner. Lin En was excited. He took out the envelope under the 3 grenades with his still trembling hands and opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter from Mr. Green. I heard about what happened to you on Halloween. I think Hogwarts Castle is not very safe, and a pistol does not seem to be enough for you to defend yourself. So I sent you some self-defense weapons from the muggle world. I hope you can use them reasonably to protect your safety. After reading Mr. Green's signature at the bottom of the letter, Lin En's mouth twitched wildly. Self-defense weapons? You call MK2 grenade self-defense weapons? Exclamation mark. Lin En still has some understanding of modern weapons. For example, the 3 pineapple-shaped MK2 grenades in front of him are filled with nitrous dark compounds and a certain amount of TNT explosives. The killing radius after the explosion is 5 to 10 yards, and if the distance of the fragments is taken into account, the killing radius can even reach 50 yards. Unlike the spells of wizards, even if the spells are cast by wizards who can cast spells silently and without wands, the light they carry during the flight will still attract the attention and vigilance of the enemy. However, the MK2 grenade does not make any noise during the throwing process, and the faint sound made when the safety pin is pulled out can also be eliminated by the spell. Therefore, if you encounter an irresistible enemy, using the MK2 grenade to buy yourself time to escape is a great choice. Thank you so much, teacher. Lin En put away the 3 grenades. For him as an alchemist, the power of the grenades alone is not enough. He plans to increase its power through the enhanced alchemy array of the array alchemy. It seems that he has been busy these days. Lin En rubbed his eyebrows. He also planned to relax himself more during the Christmas holiday. On the other side, the Gryffindor girls' dormitory. Irina was opening her Christmas present. Since her parents were ordinary people, they couldn't use owls to send Christmas presents to Hogwarts Castle. Therefore, she had to go home during the summer vacation to get the Christmas presents from her parents. At this time, she was the only one in the dormitory, and her 3 roommates, including Hermione, had gone home for Christmas. These 2 unreliable guys, they didn't stay at home to accompany me on Christmas. They said they were in a world of 2 and left me alone in Hogwarts. Woo, there is no fragrant and soft Hermione to accompany me, so sad. Irina's face was full of resentment. The 3 Christmas presents on the top were also from the 3 professors, and the things inside were exactly the same as what Lin En received last year. Professor Snape is not bad, but it's better for him to drink this joy potion himself. People just need to smile more. After picking up the joy potion sent by Professor Snape, Irina chuckled. Irina opened another cylindrical Christmas present, which contained a can of biscuits, and the sender was the We're Light Winds. Fred and George sent it. There shouldn't be any problem. Irina looked at the biscuit in her hand with suspicion, but in this timeline, they haven't invented canary biscuits yet. After thinking about it, Irina finally closed her eyes and swallowed the biscuit. Bang! The next second, a ball of white gas slowly rose, and Irina turned into a cute canary. The canary seemed to be very angry and cried, and the whole dormitory was full of chirping sounds. Bang! After a minute, the canary biscuit lost its effect, and Irina turned back to her original appearance. Fred and George. Irina gritted her teeth and clenched her fists. She was determined to give the 2 a good beating. During the time she turned into a canary, she understood why canary biscuits had appeared so early. Thinking of the topic of alchemy discussed by Senior Raoul and the We're Light Winds when they met outside the castle, Irina could guess that they had learned alchemy in advance. That Senior Raoul, could he be a time traveler like me? Exclamation mark. Otherwise, how could he change the progress of the We're Light Winds alchemy learning? Exclamation mark. Moreover, he also appeared in the troll incident. Irina thought about it, but she still couldn't confirm the other party's identity. After all, if there was such a senior in the original book, and the other party didn't take action after seeing Harry and Ron defeat the troll? Exclamation mark. You know, everything Irina did had already greatly changed the troll incident, and it was natural that what happened later would be different. At this time, Irina looked at the remaining 3 gifts, which came from Harry, Ron and Hermione respectively. Harry gave her a flying broom model, Ron gave her a set of wizard chess, and Hermione gave her a big bag of chocolate frogs. Irina carefully treasured the Christmas gift given to her by her friend, and took out a chocolate frog from the big bag, and stuffed it into her mouth. In the Gryffindor men's dormitory, Harry was also trying on his ancestral invisibility cloak. This is a liquid, silver grey dress. It feels like it was woven with water and feels very strange. Unlike the invisibility cloak in Lin's hand, Harry's ancestral invisibility cloak is one of the 3 legendary Deathly Hallows, which is said to be able to escape death. Of course, the fact that the invisibility cloak can escape death may be a bit exaggerated, but its known advantage is that it has permanent invisibility, unlike the invisibility cloaks on the market that have an expiration date. The Christmas dinner can be said to be the most sumptuous banquet in Hogwarts in a year. On the long tables of the 4 major colleges, you can see 100 fat roast turkeys, piles of roast meat and boiled potatoes, large plates of delicious sausages, bowls of peas mixed with butter, and plates of thick gravy and cranberry sauce. Every few steps along the long table of the 4 colleges, there are piles of wizard lottery firecrackers. These lottery firecrackers are very magical. Harry and Fred drew a lottery firecracker together. They saw that the lottery firecracker made a blast like a cannon bombardment, engulfing them in a puff of blue smoke. At the same time, a rear admiral's hat and several lively white mice exploded from it. This lottery firecracker is like a blind box, which makes Irina very interesting. She didn't eat much at the Christmas dinner, but nearly 100 lottery firecrackers were opened. At the guest of honor, Professor Dumbledore replaced his pointed wizard hat with a woman's hat decorated with flowers. Professor Flitwick just told him a joke, which made him laugh happily. Irina and the others watched Hagrid order one drink after another, his face getting redder and redder, and finally he kissed Professor McGonagall on the cheek. To the surprise of Irina, Harry and Ron, Professor McGonagall giggled and blushed, and her tall black top hat tilted to one side. "Hagrid is awesome," Irina shouted in her heart. When Harry, Ron and Irina left the table, they were still holding a lot of things that had exploded from the lottery bags and firecrackers, including various snacks from Honeydukes and small toys such as wizard chess. Ron was still annoyed that his gift was not good because there were many things that came out of the lottery bags and firecrackers such as wizard chess. Once again, we invite everyone to join our book club. The group number is 458,582,079, and the password is 1990. Welcome everyone to join our big family. When the group has 30 people, the author will start the lucky draw. Thank you for your support. Chapter 59, Mirror Averized. In the middle of the night, Irina sneaked out of the girls' dormitory, intending to go to the kitchen of Hogwarts to ask the house elves of Hogwarts Castle for some food as usual. She was busy opening the lottery bags and firecrackers at the previous Christmas dinner, and she didn't eat enough. She grabbed her wand in one hand and came to the Gryffindor common room. It was late at night, and the Gryffindor common room was empty at this time. It was dark all around. People who didn't have a certain courage would not dare to wander here alone. But just as Irina was about to walk out of the Gryffindor common room, she felt someone pat her shoulder. Fuck, ghost. After finding that there was nothing behind her, Irina was so scared that she stepped back repeatedly and at the same time raised her hand to her original position and cast a few freezing spells. The ice blue beam flashed by as if it hit something. Then, the invisibility cloak slid off like flowing water, revealing the boy who was frozen into an ice sculpture inside. Harry? Irina was stunned for a moment, and she quickly removed the spell for the other party. The thought Harry was trembling all over. He put on his invisibility cloak again and complained, "Irina, you don't have to be so sensitive. Where can ghosts come from in the Gryffindor common room? Besides, there are ghosts here, and you are not afraid of them." Irina snorted. "Who told you to scare me? You deserve to be frozen into an ice sculpture." Harry said helplessly, "This invisibility cloak is my father's legacy. I just want to try its effect. Then I happened to see you here, so I wanted to ask you if you want to go out for a night walk together." Irina spread her hands. "With my magical strength, even if I don't wear the invisibility cloak, I won't be discovered by Filch. However, if you wear the invisibility cloak, can you go to the restricted book section of the library without being discovered?" Although Irina can use various magic to conceal her body, she can't use the disillusionment charm for the time being, so she naturally can't get through Madame Pince's strict defense to enter the restricted book section. Harry nodded and said, "Of course, you didn't notice me just now." Hearing this, Irina's eyes lit up. She said to Harry, "Harry, you can try to go to the restricted section. I heard that the books there record a lot of powerful magic that can help you defeat Malfoy." According to the original book, after Harry was discovered in the restricted section, he ran all the way to find the abandoned classroom with the Mirror Averized. Although the Mirror Averized cannot change reality, Irina is still interested in what her inner wishes are. As long as she can trick Harry into the restricted section and then get him kicked out, she can probably find the classroom by following Harry. Harry was also a little surprised to hear Irina's words. You know, Harry was still upset about the duel with Malfoy, but was beaten all over the floor by Malfoy and had to rely on Hermione to save the situation. Naturally, he hoped that he could defeat Malfoy with his own spells. I'll go with you, but you have to leave the book search to you. I'll just hide in the invisibility cloak, Irina said to Harry. Although Harry was a little puzzled, he agreed without hesitation. Harry's invisibility cloak is for adults, and it is like a huge cape to them. Even if Harry and Irina were hiding in the invisibility cloak, they could still walk side by side with a distance of half a meter. In this way, Irina successfully persuaded Harry to walk into the restricted book section of the library. What happened later was not much different from the original book. When Harry was flipping through a book in the restricted book section, the book suddenly made a sharp creepy scream, which completely broke the silence of the library, which made Harry hide in the invisibility cloak and drag Irina to run. Irina didn't care where Harry ran, she followed him. Soon, Harry and Irina hid in an abandoned classroom. This was an abandoned classroom. Many tables and chairs were piled against the wall, presenting a large black shadow. There was also an upside down water basket. However, on the wall facing Harry and Irina, there was something that didn't seem to belong here, as if someone had temporarily put it here, because there was no place to put it. This is a very impressive mirror, reaching up to the ceiling, with a gorgeous golden frame and 2 claw-shaped feet underneath. On the top of the mirror is a line of words: Eris, Stella, Eru, Aytub, Cathru, Aytion, Vos. This line of words read backwards. It is, I show you not your face, but your desire. After seeing this line of words, Irina understood that this is the mirror of Erised. At this time, Harry took a few steps forward and looked at the mirror of Erised. After seeing what appeared in the mirror of Erised, he was shocked and quickly covered his mouth with his hand to prevent himself from screaming. In the mirror of Erised in front of Harry, there were at least a dozen people standing behind him, but when Harry turned around suddenly, he found that there was no one except Irina, who looked innocent. Could it be that these people were all invisible, wearing invisibility cloaks, and the function of this mirror was to break the invisibility? Exclamation mark. Harry thought so. He looked carefully at the scene in the mirror. He saw a woman standing behind him, smiling and waving at him. This was a very beautiful woman, with dark red hair and the same green eyes as Harry, and next to her was a tall and thin man with black hair, holding her with his hands. The man wore glasses, had messy hair, and had a hair on the back of his head like Harry. They were his parents? Exclamation mark. This crazy idea came into Harry's mind, but seeing the couple in the mirror, who had many things in common with him, Harry firmly believed that his point of view was correct. Mom? Harry called in a low voice. Dad? The people in the mirror were all smiling at him, and they were all his family. Just as Harry was immersed in the scene presented by the mirror of Erised, Irina patted Harry's shoulder and woke him up. Do you see the words on this mirror? Read it upside down. Harry looked at her confused and did as she said. I don't show your face, but your desire. After saying that, Harry seemed to realize something. He looked at Irina and asked, so, the fact that my parents appear in this mirror doesn't mean they are still alive, but because my deepest desire is to live with my parents? Harry said this, feeling extremely lost. He thought he could find his parents and never have to go back to that damn Dursley house again. Chapter 60 Professor, I think I can still use it. Although Irina couldn't see what Harry saw in the mirror, she nodded and said, yes, if I'm not mistaken, this mirror is called the mirror of Erised, and it can reflect the things people desire most in their hearts. Harry turned his eyes to the mirror of Erised again. In the mirror of Erised, the Potter family was waving at him with a smile. Harry stared at them eagerly, pressing his hands tightly on the mirror, as if he wanted to enter the mirror world. Harry didn't know how long he stayed in front of the mirror of Erised. Irina didn't disturb him, because she knew the pain in his heart at the moment. It wasn't until some noises came from the distance that he came back to his senses. Irina, do you want to take a look at this mirror of Erised? Harry asked. Irina nodded happily, and she walked forward and stood in Harry's previous position. When Irina looked at the mirror of Erised, she also covered her mouth with her hands, and her eyes became wet. The mirror of Erised showed a warm room. A tall girl was lying on a soft and warm sofa, holding a cute white cat in her arms. There were 3 or 4 kittens sleeping soundly beside her, and a couple was discussing her college life not far away. This was her previous life. Irina was a little sad. Sure enough, what she wanted most was to return to the previous world! Unlike the open-minded Lin En, she was soft-hearted and found it difficult to give up everything she had. Although she did not regret saving those poor animals, she still felt sad and upset to leave her loved ones and living environment forever. Irina, we should go back. Seeing Irina standing in front of the mirror averized for a long time without saying anything, Harry could not help but remind her. Well, Irina gently wiped the corner of her eyes. Let's go back. The next night, Harry called Ron to go to the abandoned classroom again, but when Harry was about to call Irina, Irina declined. In Irina's opinion, since the past cannot be reversed, it is better to face the new life positively. Although she did feel very sad last night and even cried sadly after returning to the dormitory, let the sadness of yesterday dissipate with time. In the abandoned classroom, Harry saw his family again, while Ron saw himself in the mirror as the president of the boys' union and the captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team. He was wearing a prefect badge and holding the house cup and the Quidditch cup in his hands. But after learning that the mirror averized was only showing the desires in people's hearts, Ron suddenly felt a little disappointed and was unwilling to come with Harry on the 3rd day. Late at night on the 3rd day, Harry's figure appeared in the abandoned classroom again. He seemed to be familiar with the road and walked very fast. His longing for his relatives in the mirror made him not notice the loud noise on his way here. Harry sat down on the floor in front of the mirror averized. He planned to stay here all night with his family and not go anywhere. But at this moment, a voice came and froze Harry in place. So, you're here again, Harry? Harry suddenly felt his internal organs frozen, a feeling even more terrible than being frozen by Irina's freezing spell. Harry turned around and saw that the person sitting at a table near the wall was none other than Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts. Harry came in such a hurry that he didn't notice Professor Dumbledore standing next to him when he walked into the classroom. I didn't see you, sir. Harry explained hurriedly. It's strange that you became nearsighted after becoming invisible, Professor Dumbledore said with a smile. Harry couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he saw the smile on his face. So, said Professor Dumbledore, sliding down from the table and sitting on the floor with Harry, you have discovered the joys of the mirror averized, like thousands of others before you, but I suppose you now know its power. Harry nodded honestly. Yes, it allowed me to see my family. Professor Dumbledore lowered his head and blinked his blue eyes behind his half-moon glasses and allowed your friend Ron to see himself as the head boy. How do you know? Harry exclaimed. I don't need an invisibility cloak to become invisible, Dumbledore said gently. So, can you think about what the mirror averized allows all of us to see? Even Lin, a first-year student, could cast the disillusionment charm, not to mention Dumbledore, a Magic King level wizard. The silent and wandless casting of the disillusionment charm was easy for Dumbledore. Harry said, Irina told me that the mirror averized shows my inner desire. Hearing this, Professor Dumbledore was stunned. He only found Harry here the next day, and he didn't know what happened on the first day of this classroom. If that's the case, why do you still? Professor Dumbledore was a little puzzled. Since he knew that everything was illusory, why would Harry still indulge in it? Harry smiled bitterly and said, but even so, it can let me see my family whom I have never met. Professor Dumbledore understood. However, Professor Dumbledore's face became serious, and he said to Harry, however, the mirror averized can neither teach us knowledge nor tell us the truth. People waste their time in front of it, obsessed with what they can see, and even driven crazy, because they don't know whether everything in the mirror is real or possible. I'm very happy that you can recognize the nature of the mirror averized, but I will not let you continue to use it. The mirror averized will be moved to a new place tomorrow. Harry, I ask you not to look for it again. If you happen to see it again one day, you must be mentally prepared. It is useless to indulge in illusory dreams and forget real life. I think your friend Irina should understand this. Professor Dumbledore said. Harry was a little unconvinced, but he also understood that what Professor Dumbledore said was correct. He could only nod with disappointment to show that he understood. Professor Dumbledore smiled and said, "In that case, why don't you put on that amazing invisibility cloak and go back to sleep?" After watching Harry leave, Professor Dumbledore cast his eyes on an empty chair not far away. Professor Dumbledore said softly, "Since you are here, why don't you come out and see me, Mr. All?" As the voice fell, a figure suddenly appeared on the shabby chair. Lin lifted his disillusionment spell and looked at Professor Dumbledore. "Sorry, Professor, I think I can still use this mirror Averized. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket. Thanks to bookfriend 2021071911435637 for the 100 book coins reward." Chapter 61. Give you some more stories. After the Christmas holiday, Lin En started to look for the mirror Averized in Hogwarts Castle, but he didn't know the exact location of this abandoned classroom. It took him 3 days, and he even had to follow Harry, who made a loud noise, to find it. Unfortunately, as soon as he arrived here, he noticed Professor Dumbledore sitting at the table, which forced him to get Professor Dumbledore's permission before studying the mirror Averized. "Oh," Professor Dumbledore said softly, "but I think you should understand the dangers of this mirror Averized." Lin En nodded and said, "Of course, I'm not interested in what the mirror Averized reflects, but the mirror Averized is an extremely exquisite all-chemical product. I want to use it to study the mysteries of alchemy. You should know, Professor, I have already become Professor Green's apprentice, and now I'm a formal alchemist," Lin En said to Professor Dumbledore. As the headmaster of Hogwarts, Professor Dumbledore could not hide what happened in Hogwarts Castle. Lin En believed that the other party had already known that he was Professor Green's student, so he directly stated his intention. Professor Dumbledore was not surprised. A faint light flashed from behind his half-moon glasses. He nodded slightly and said, "Of course, Hogwarts will never refuse students to learn more knowledge, except for dangerous knowledge. You can study the mirror Averized here, but only tonight. I will move it away tomorrow." Lin En had no objection to this. He also understood what the mirror Averized would be used for. At the end of this school year, the mirror Averized will become the last barrier to guard the Philosopher's Stone. Only those who want to find the Philosopher's Stone, but don't want to use it, can take the Philosopher's Stone out of the mirror Averized. Professor Dumbledore gave him a mysterious smile, then stood up and left the abandoned classroom. Lin respectfully watched Professor Dumbledore leave, then cast his eyes on the mirror Averized. The mirror Averized seemed to have the ability to read minds. After reading Lin's heart, it projected the corresponding picture. Lin glanced at the picture in the mirror, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a sneer. Then, Lin raised his right hand holding the wand, and a barely detectable golden light broke through the air and merged into the mirror Averized in an instant. The next moment, the picture in the mirror disappeared, and the entire mirror Averized began to emit golden light. All chemical runes emerged from the inside of the mirror Averized and appeared in front of Lin. Lin waved the wand in his hand easily, fiddling with the all-chemical arrays that appeared in front of him, and soon he found the target of his trip. Lin gently tapped the wand in his hand on an all-chemical array that was flashing with strange patterns, letting it move towards him, while Lin carefully examined every all-chemical rune inside the all-chemical array. Is this the all-chemical rune that can read people's hearts? This may be similar to the magic spell Legilimency. Interesting. Lin En looked at the all-chemical runes that were shining in front of him and murmured, "Even if they are two completely different power systems, most of them have ways to achieve the same goal. For example, ordinary people's guns and wizards' killing spells can both achieve the purpose of killing a person. Similarly, wizards' Legilimency spells and the all-chemical rune in front of Lin En can both achieve the purpose of peeping into other people's hearts. Wait, this magic mirror seems to rely on more than just this all-chemical array that peeks into the heart." Suddenly, Lin En's expression changed. He waved his magic wand and pulled another all-chemical array not far away to his front. Lin En used the secret method taught to him by Master Nicholas Flamel to analyze the all-chemical array in front of him. Soon, Lin En understood, so that's how it is. The all-chemical array that can peek into the soul, connected with the all-chemical array that can create illusions and make people lose their minds, finally created this mirror Averized. Lin En raised his wand, and the golden light flew out from the inside of the mirror of their eyes, and returned to his wand. The alchemical arrays that had appeared before lost the support of the secret method and soon returned to the inside of the mirror of their eyes. Looking at the mirror of eyes in front of him, Lin En was thoughtful. Fortunately, the creator of this mirror of their eyes did not have too much malice. Otherwise, as long as the proportion of the power of each alchemical array was adjusted, this magic mirror would become a real killing weapon. It would be able to create an illusion that could seduce people's minds and make people lose themselves forever according to each person's experience. This time I really gained a lot. Lin En smiled. In the mirror of their eyes, Lin En successfully copied the alchemical array, and for the alchemical rune attributes, Lin En planned to name them spiritual, illusion and lost respectively. Just as Lin En was about to leave the abandoned classroom, his steps suddenly stopped, and he turned around again, and looked at the mirror of their eyes. Wait, if this mirror of their eyes is used to guard the Philosopher's Stone, maybe I can add a little bit of ingredients to it. Lin En's mouth corners rose, and he planned to give Voldemort a hard blow. When he was analyzing the alchemical array of the mirror of their eyes, he also found a storage alchemical array that can store objects and take them out when needed. The storage function of this alchemical array is quite special. It can freeze the time of the objects stored in it, and when the objects are stored, the storage can set the conditions for taking them out. It's like Professor Dumbledore put the Philosopher's Stone in it, and the condition he set was that only those who want to find the Philosopher's Stone, but don't use it can take it out. Lin En walked up with a sinister smile. He took out a pineapple-shaped MK2 grenade from his pocket, pulled out the safety pin, and stuffed it into the mirror of their eyes. Set the method of taking it out. Only those who want to get the Philosopher's Stone and intend to use it to achieve their own goals can take out this MK2 grenade. Lin En's voice was cold, as if he was making a judgment. After completing the setting of storage and retrieval conditions, Lin En left the abandoned classroom with ease. Not long after he left the abandoned classroom, Professor Dumbledore appeared at the door of the classroom again. He came to the mirror of their eyes and planned to move it away. But when he touched the mirror of their eyes, he seemed to realize something, and a strange look appeared on his face. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62. With the big sister protecting you, you won't panic at all when encountering problems. The Christmas holidays always go by quickly, and on the day before school starts, Hermione returns to Hogwarts Castle. Not long after the holiday, the Hogwarts Quidditch event is coming again. This time, Gryffindor is playing against Hufflepuff. Since the Gryffindor Quidditch team beat Slytherin, as long as they can beat Hufflepuff, they can beat Slytherin in the House Cup Championship and win the championship. Irina, Hermione, and Ron are all cheering for Harry's training. However, after learning that the referee of this game is Professor Snape, Hermione and Ron's attitudes immediately change. In the eyes of Hermione and Ron, it was Professor Snape who cast a spell on Harry in the last game, and this time Professor Snape is a referee, and is probably going to attack Harry. Hermione said to Harry, "Don't participate in the game." Ron replied, "Just say you are sick." Hermione suggested, "Pretend to break your leg." Ron suggested, "Really break your leg?" The other three immediately looked at Ron. "You made Harry break his leg for real? Are you a traitor?" Exclamation mark. "I can't do this," Harry said helplessly. "Our Gryffindor Quidditch team has never had a substitute seeker. If I quit, the Gryffindor Quidditch team may not even be able to participate in the game." Just as Hermione and Ron were worried about Harry and Irina were slacking off, Neville ran into the Gryffindor common room. At this time, Neville's legs were tightly pressed together. It was obvious that he was cast under a leg-locking curse. If no one helped, he might have jumped up like a rabbit. Who did it? Irina stood up with a cold face. After half a school year, Neville had already been her friend. She naturally could not ignore the attack on her friend. "What's going on?" Hermione quickly cast a spell to break Neville's hand, then led Neville over and asked him to sit down. Neville said in a trembling voice, "Malfoy did it. I met him outside the library. He said he had been looking for someone to practice the spell. Irina did not speak. She pulled Neville and walked out of the common room. Hey, Irina, what are you doing? Neville was confused. Irina said angrily, remember, Neville, I never allow others to bully my friends. Of course, you should never tolerate anyone bullying you. You have to be brave. Come on, I'll take you to beat Malfoy. Hearing this, Harry and Ron, who were not far away, immediately followed excitedly. Before Neville could say anything, Harry and Ron each carried Neville on one side and followed Irina's steps. With Neville's guidance, Irina found Malfoy, who looked very proud, not far from the library. He seemed to be very proud of having successfully tricked Neville. Stand still. Irina raised her wand without hesitation and cast a spell. Malfoy's legs immediately stuck together, and he staggered and almost fell to the ground. Lol, you're looking for death. Malfoy, who was cursed, was furious. He raised his wand and wanted to attack Irina. Disarm you. Irina swung her wand and cast a disarming spell without giving Malfoy a chance to react. The red light bombarded Malfoy, knocking him back, and the wand in Malfoy's hand flew out and landed in Irina's hand. Beat him, Neville. Irina looked at Neville, pointed at Malfoy who was lying on the ground, and said. Neville was a little timid. I don't dare. Irina patted Neville's shoulder vigorously. What's so scary? It's just Malfoy. Remember, if you keep giving in, Malfoy will only get worse. Only when he understands what pain is and stays away from you, you will not be bullied. As she said that, Irina pushed Neville forward and pushed him in front of Malfoy. Neville raised his huge fist, but he was still a little at a loss and didn't dare to really do it. Longbottom, you, how dare you do it to me? Looking at the black fists above his head, Malfoy was a little panicked. Hearing this, Neville immediately shrank his neck and didn't dare to do it again. Hit him, Neville. That's right, beat him. But at this moment, Harry and Ron were cheering on the side, encouraging Neville. Hearing the encouragement from his good friends, Neville finally made up his mind. He closed his eyes and punched Malfoy again and again. Ouch 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 ouch. Malfoy's shrill screams came out immediately, as if he was dubbed by Tomcat. After an unknown amount of time, Neville carefully retreated to his original position, leaving Malfoy lying on the ground with a bruised face. Malfoy, stay away from Neville in the future, or we will beat you every time we see you, Ron said, relying on Irina's presence. After that, everyone took Neville back to the Gryffindor common room. Goyle and Crabbe, who were hiding far away, saw that everyone had gone away, and then they carefully stepped forward to help Malfoy up. Boss, are you okay? Goyle and Crabbe shook Malfoy. Stop. Malfoy stopped the two and said harshly, don't shake it, I'm going to vomit if you shake it again. Damn it, damn Lowell, damn Longbottom, I must tell my dad. At the same time, in the Gryffindor common room. Irina, you seem to have become much stronger. I remember that you only used the freezing spell to beat people before. Hermione, who had been silent before, said to Irina. Although beating Malfoy violently was for Neville's revenge, it was ultimately fighting violence with violence. Hermione neither supported nor opposed it. After all, it was all for her good friend Neville. Irina smiled and hugged Hermione. All spells are universal. I can cast the freezing spell without a wand. It is naturally not difficult to cast some other spells. In fact, Irina still concealed some things. After she learned the wandless casting of the freezing spell, her rather offensive spells such as the disarming spell could be cast silently. Like Lin, although she had revealed her trump card of casting the freezing spell without a wand, she still planned to keep the ability to cast other spells silently as her trump card. Irina looked at Harry and said, Harry, go to your Quidditch game without worry. If Professor Snape wants to hurt you, I will use a disarming curse. Harry nodded vigorously, his eyes full of admiration. In the eyes of Harry and others, Irina has long been their big sister. With the big sister covering you, you don't have to panic when encountering problems. Thanks to bookfriend 20210306193930142 for the 200 book coins reward. Thank you for your support. I've already spoiled chapter 63, so stop making assumptions. However, what Harry was worried about did not happen. When Harry and others arrived at the Quidditch field, they found Professor Dumbledore, who was there, which made Harry and others feel at ease. And this Quidditch game was also very smooth for Harry. Not long after the game started, Harry caught the golden snitch and won the championship for Gryffindor. The stands were boiling. This was probably the fastest time that the golden snitch was caught since the establishment of the Hogwarts Quidditch game. At this moment, Harry jumped off the Nimbus 2000 at a height of 1 foot above the ground. His face was full of joy. He couldn't believe that the game lasted less than 5 minutes before he won. At this time, Harry felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Professor Dumbledore. "Well done," Professor Dumbledore said softly. "I'm glad to see that you don't think about the mirror all day and you live a fulfilling life." Harry smiled. With 3 good friends, Irina, Hermione and Ron, around him, he naturally would not indulge in unreal things anymore. Harry came out of the locker room happily and returned to his friends, accepting their congratulations. "I'll go put my broom back in the broom shed first. See you later," Harry said to everyone. However, when Harry came to the broom shed to put down his flying broom and looked at Hogwarts Castle, he suddenly found a hooded figure quickly walking down the main entrance steps of the castle and heading straight for the Forbidden Forest. The appearance of this figure made Harry alert immediately. He recognized that the owner of the figure was Snape. Could it be that Snape was going to do something bad? Exclamation mark. Harry speculated with malice. Harry quickly jumped on his Nimbus 2000 and followed Snape, intending to follow him quietly and see through his conspiracy. After entering the Forbidden Forest, the dense branches and leaves blocked Harry's sight, but fortunately, Snape stopped shortly after entering the Forbidden Forest. Riding on the Nimbus 2000, Harry quietly pushed aside the leaves and looked at the open space filled with shadows below. Quirrell was standing not far from Snape, and the two seemed to be confronting each other. "I don't know why you want to choose to meet here, Severus." Quirrell's stumbling voice came out. "Oh, I don't think this should be made public," Snape said. His voice was very cold. "After all, students should not know about the Philosopher's Stone." Philosopher's Stone! Exclamation mark. Harry was startled and hurriedly listened in. Snape asked coldly, "Have you figured out how to get past Hagrid's monster?" Quirrell looked at a loss. But, Severus, you don't want me to be your enemy, Quirrell," Snape said, taking a step closer to him. Quirrell's voice was still stuttering. I don't know that you." Snape interrupted Quirrell directly. "You know what I mean. Ha, Quirrell, your secret trick. I'm waiting." But, I don't know. Quirrell seemed to have some concerns. "Very good," Snape interrupted him again. "We will talk again soon, when you have time to think it over and decide who you will serve." Snape covered his head with his cloak and strode out of the open space. Seeing this, Harry quietly rode away on his broomstick to prevent himself from being discovered, leaving Quirrell alone standing there, like a clay sculpture or wooden sculpture. TSK. Heh. But just after Harry left, Quirrell made a light TSK sound and suddenly looked in the direction Harry left, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a smile. "Harry, where have you been?" "In Hogwarts Castle." Hermione looked at Harry, who had just returned, and asked. Harry's eyes were very serious. He took Ron and Hermione's hands and said, "Don't worry about that for now. Let's find an empty room. I have something to tell you." Irina asked, "It's about Professor Snape, right?" Harry was stunned for a moment. He looked at Irina with some surprise, and then nodded honestly, "Yes." Harry took the 3 people to an empty room and told them what he saw and heard. "So, our analysis is correct. The thing guarded by the 3-headed dog is the Philosopher's Stone, and Snape wants to get the Philosopher's Stone. In addition, Snape mentioned Quirrell's secret trick. Could it be that, in addition to Fluffy, Quirrell is also one of the guardians of the Philosopher's Stone, and there are other mechanisms under the trapdoor to protect the stone?" Hermione analyzed calmly. Irina said, "Perhaps many professors at Hogwarts have participated in setting up the mechanism to protect the Philosopher's Stone. If I'm not mistaken, the professors responsible for setting up these mechanisms are professors of our compulsory courses, including Professor Sprout of Herbology, Professor Flitwick of Charms, Professor McGonagall of Transfiguration, Professor Quirrell of Defense Against the Dark Arts, and Professor Snape of Potions. Perhaps Professor Dumbledore is also involved. I have already spoiled the level for you. Please be more helpful, and stop making up your mind. Irina looked at the three people nervously, fearing that the three people would burst out with some amazing words again. What? You said Snape also participated in protecting the Philosopher's Stone? Harry looked at Irina in disbelief. Irina nodded and analyzed. Yes, otherwise how did Snape know about the Philosopher's Stone? Besides, stealing from the inside is often the easiest. The three nodded repeatedly, and Irina's analysis convinced them. Hermione said solemnly, then we should be more careful. After all, Snape participated in the arrangement of the mechanism, and I'm afraid he also has a certain understanding of the mechanisms of several other professors. Harry and Ron also joined the discussion, and they put forward their own views on how to prevent Snape from stealing the Philosopher's Stone. Just when the three were discussing fiercely, Irina raised her hand weakly. By the way, have you considered a possibility? What possibility? The three looked at Irina. Irina said, maybe Quirrell also wants to get the Philosopher's Stone. Otherwise, why didn't Quirrell report this matter to Professor Dumbledore, but was willing to go to the Forbidden Forest alone to meet Snape? Unless they are originally competitors, it doesn't make sense. Since Snape's black pot can't be washed away, let her drag Quirrell into the water. Anyway, Harry and the others have already planned to take action. If they include Quirrell in the target, that needs to be prevented. Her goal will be achieved. As for monitoring Snape, let them do it, just to kill their excess energy. Irina nodded with satisfaction. Chapter 64. Hagrid, your snacks are killing you. So, Harry, Ron and Hermione began to guard against Professor Snape and Quirrell, while Irina continued to slack off, and had a very leisurely life. In addition to monitoring the two professors, Hermione was also worried about the final exams that would begin in more than 2 months. Don't worry, Hermione, you will definitely be the top student in the grade, Irina said to Hermione, who was sorting out her review materials, holding a bag of potato chips. To be honest, there are not many courses for the first year of Hogwarts, and its theoretical knowledge is at most the amount of courses for 1 week in Irina's high school in her previous life. Although the homework assigned by various professors to students has been gradually increasing over this period of time, these are nothing to Irina and Hermione, who are academic masters, and they have completed their homework long ago. However, the attitudes of the two after completing their homework are completely different. Irina adheres to the attitude of enjoying life in the moment, eating snacks while watching Harry and Ron play wizard chess, while Hermione is studying hard with a pile of textbooks. Irina, please. Hermione looked at Irina helplessly. The crunch sound of Irina eating potato chips tempted her all the time. Irina took out a potato chip. There are so many young wizards in Hogwarts. If even Hermione can't pass the final exam, they will probably be kicked out and go home in disgrace. Come, have some potato chips. Hermione opened her mouth obediently and let Irina feed her the potato chips obediently. At this moment, the two heard Ron's voice not far away. Hagrid, what are you doing in the library? Ron looked a little surprised. You know, Hagrid, as a gamekeeper, never comes to the library. Hagrid's eyes were hiding, and there seemed to be something hidden behind him. I'm just looking around. Harry stood up and asked, wait, Hagrid, can you tell us what other mechanisms are there to protect the Philosopher's Stone besides Fluffy? How do you know? Hagrid exclaimed, but then he sank his face. Listen, come to me later. Remember, I didn't promise you anything. Don't talk nonsense here. There are some things students shouldn't know. They will think I told you. Then see you later, Hagrid. Harry said, suppressing his excitement. And Irina was also a little excited after watching the exchange between the two. If she hadn't seen it wrong just now, the books behind Hagrid were all related to fire dragons, such as Fire Dragon Species in Britain and Ireland, from Fire Dragon Eggs to Hell, Guide to Raising Fire Dragons, etc. Hey, is there a strange thing mixed in? Exclamation mark. An hour later, the four knocked on the door of Hagrid's hut. When the four people came here, they found that all the curtains of the hut were drawn tightly, and nothing could be seen inside, as if Hagrid was hiding something unspeakable. Hagrid, you are too deliberate. Irina looked at the hut, a little embarrassed. Who is it? Hagrid did not open the door directly, but asked through the door. After learning that it was Irina and others, Hagrid let them in and immediately closed the door after the 4 people entered the house. The heat in the hut was almost suffocating. Although it was such a warm and sunny day, there was still a blazing fire in the fireplace. Hagrid made tea for Irina and others, and took out rock cakes to entertain Irina and others. Irina glanced at the 3 people who were trying to deal with the rock cakes with painful masks, hid it in her pocket when Hagrid was not paying attention, and then pretended to have finished it. Harry and the other 2 hurriedly followed suit. "Oh, have you finished eating? Don't be polite, I still have more." Seeing this, Hagrid planned to bring another plate of rock cakes over. Hearing this, the 4 of them were scared to death and quickly declined. Other people's snacks cost money, but Hagrid's snacks cost a lot. In order to prevent Hagrid from taking his rock cake, Irina quickly changed the subject. "Hagrid, I know you don't want to tell us about the mechanism that protects the Philosopher's Stone, but in fact, we just want to confirm who designed those mechanisms." Hermione nodded repeatedly and complimented Hagrid. "We want to know, besides you, who else can Dumbledore trust?" Hearing Hermione's words, Hagrid was a little flattered, and he pushed his chest hard. Seeing this, Harry and Ron also smiled. "Well, it doesn't hurt to tell you. He borrowed Fluffy from me, and then asked several other professors to cast magic. Let me think. Professor Sprout, Professor Flitwick, Professor McGonagall, Professor Quirrell, Professor Dumbledore himself also cast magic. Oh, by the way, I forgot one person, Professor Snape." Hearing this, Harry, Ron and Hermione looked at each other. The truth that Hagrid said was exactly the same as what Irina had guessed before, which made the 3 of them feel astonished. "Irina, you are really amazing," Harry said in disbelief. Ron also nodded vigorously. "Yes, it's exactly the same as what Hagrid said. You are worthy of being the big sister." At this time, Hermione looked at Hagrid and asked, "Hagrid, you are the only one who knows how to get through Fluffy, right? You won't tell anyone, right? Other professors won't know either? Except me and Dumbledore, no one else should know," Hagrid said proudly. "Excuse me, this gentleman who grew up drinking truth serum, what are you proud of?" Exclamation mark. When I thought that Hagrid was just drinking and bragging, and then revealed the method of getting through Fluffy, Irina couldn't help but want to complain. "That's good. Hagrid, can we open a window? I'm so hot," Harry said to Hagrid. But Hagrid refused. "Harry, no, Harry, I'm sorry." At this time, Harry noticed that Hagrid's eyes turned to the fire, and he also looked over. "Hagrid, what is that?" Harry asked in disbelief. In the middle of the fire, there lay a large black egg. "Is that a dragon egg, Hagrid?" Irina walked to the dragon egg excitedly, and she looked at the large black egg. "Oh," Hagrid was a little uneasy. "I won it. I was drinking in the village bar and playing cards with a stranger. To be honest, that person probably couldn't wait to get rid of it." Irina's eyes sparkled. She looked at Hagrid and asked, "Hagrid, can I witness its birth? You know, I especially like some cute little lives. Although creatures like fire dragons are not cute at all when they grow up, at least they are cute when they are young. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket." Chapter 65, Magic Crystal that increases power. Hagrid patted his chest and said without hesitation, "Of course, no problem. When the dragon eggs are about to hatch, I will let Harris Hedwig take a note to you." After getting Hagrid's promise, everyone left the hut contentedly. Not long after Irina and others left, a figure suddenly appeared outside Hagrid's hut. The owner of this figure knocked on the door of the hut. "Who is it?" Hagrid's vigilant voice came. Irina and others had just left. It was obvious that the 4 of them would not come, and the matter of the fire dragon must not be known to others. "It's me, Lin Rao. We met last year," Lin said calmly. After a while, the door of the hut was opened, and Hagrid poked his head out to look at Lin. "Is it you, Mr. Rowe? I wonder what you want to talk to me about," Hagrid asked. He remembered this student. He took the same boat with this student when he welcomed the new students last year. In his impression, this was a child with a strong magical talent. He had praised him before. Lin En said softly, "Hello, Mr. Hagrid. I heard that you got a dragon egg and planned to hatch it." Hearing this, Hagrid panicked. Where did this child hear this? Exclamation mark. "No, you must have been deceived. There is no such thing." Hagrid denied it. Please don't rush to refuse, Mr. Hagrid. Lin En's expression was indifferent. He raised his right hand slightly, and a square iron sheet with a side length of half a meter appeared in his hand. In fact, I'm an alchemist. I made an all-chemical product that can perfectly simulate the flame environment required for the dragon to hatch. As he said, Lin En injected magic power into the square iron sheet in his hand, and a ball of magic flame rose from the surface of the iron sheet. It looked very bluffing, but not too hot. Seeing this scene, Hagrid's eyes lit up. From Lin En's words, Hagrid could tell Lin En's goodwill. After thinking a little, he invited Lin En into the house and brewed a pot of tea. Lin En cast his eyes towards the dragon egg in the fireplace and said, "I'm willing to give this all-chemical product to Mr. Hagrid. In addition, I can also provide a space for the young dragon to grow, a suitcase with an internal space equivalent to 2 houses. Moreover, this suitcase is cast with alchemy, not the traceless stretch spell, so it does not violate the laws of the Ministry of Magic." The all-chemical array used by Lin En to refine the suitcase came from the storage array of the Mirror of Erised. After Lin En removed the all-chemical runes that could freeze the time of the items in the all-chemical array, the effect was equivalent to the suitcase of Newt Scamander that was cast with a powerful traceless stretch spell. Of course, in order to allow the space inside the suitcase to allow living things to survive and consolidate its stability, Lin En also added a lot of all-chemical arrays learned in Nicholas Flamel's hut. Although Nicholas Flamel mainly taught Lin En the knowledge of magic alchemy, alchemy has some common knowledge points, and Lin En is an alchemist who practices both magic and array. Therefore, Nicholas Flamel would inevitably mention the means by which array alchemy can achieve the same goal when explaining the knowledge points. Really? Thank you so much, Mr. All. You are such a good boy. Hearing Lin En's words, Hagrid was overjoyed. He didn't expect there would be such a good person in the world. But at this moment, Lin En spoke again. But, Lin En's voice made Hagrid's heart jump. "You know, I'm an alchemist, and alchemy is about equal exchange." Looking at Lin En's calm eyes, Hagrid was panicked for no reason. "What do you want to get?" Lin En said softly, "Some materials from precious magical animals, such as the horns and feathers of unicorns. In addition, when this fire dragon is born, I need a tube of its blood." As he said, Lin En took out a 100ml syringe from his arms. As early as, after learning the magic alchemy from Nicholas Flamel, and knowing how to combine the alchemy of the 2 systems of formation, Lin En planned to use the formation alchemy and the magic alchemy to refine an alchemy product that can enhance his combat strength, and his idea was to imitate the infinite gloves of Thanos in the movie. Through the refining of the magic alchemy, the gloves with magical power can be obtained, and the alchemy array of the formation alchemy allows the gloves to absorb the power of each gem and increase the user. Of course, this all-chemical product does not have to look like a glove. After all, that kind of appearance is too low. Before that, Lin En planned to make the power gem for amplification first. As for why it is a power gem, it is because in the book of legal alchemy taught by Nicholas Flamel, there is a record of the method of refining magic crystals that can amplify power, which allows Lin En to not spend energy to conceive an all-chemical plan. The raw materials needed for the refining of this legal all-chemical product include sufficient magic power, carriers of gems or crystals, and symbols of power. The first 2 raw materials are readily available to Lin En, and the third symbol of power, Lin En's idea, is the blood of the fire dragon. In Lin En's view, the fire dragon is definitely a representative of power, but only a living fire dragon can represent power, so the dead fire dragon blood on the market cannot meet Lin En's needs. Only fresh fire dragon blood can be regarded as a symbol of power. This is why Lin En needs the blood of this young dragon. 100ml of blood is not a big burden for a dragon, even if it is just a newborn dragon, and the generous reward given by Lin En makes it difficult for Hagrid to refuse. So, Hagrid hesitated for a while and agreed. "Okay, but you must not hurt it." Lin En smiled, bowed to Hagrid, left the square iron sheet and a suitcase that he took out of thin air, and left Hagrid's hut. Since Hagrid has given permission, Lin En will naturally start to prepare for alchemy. Of course, Lin En must return to the Roll Manor to refine this magic crystal that increases power. After all, there are only 2 months left before the final exam, and Quirrell's threat has not been lifted, so all Lin En has to do is prepare the raw materials and alchemy knowledge. As for how to preserve the dragon blood after it is taken out, Lin En believes that the alchemy array of the mirror of their eyes that can freeze the time of the stored object is a perfect solution. It's getting close to the end of the semester, so I'm going to be busy. Lin En rubbed his brows lightly. What worried him was not the easy final exam, but a dark devil lurking in the dark and ready to make a move. Chapter 66. Charmander is double standard, just because Irina is pretty? Exclamation mark. A few days later, one morning, Hedwig brought Hagrid's note to Harry and others. It's almost hatched. There were only these 4 words on the note. Others may not understand the meaning of these 4 words, but Harry and others know it very well. This means that the little dragon is about to hatch. After learning the news, Ron immediately planned to skip class to find Hagrid. He thought that he might not see a few little dragons hatching in his life. Compared with this, what is going to class? Exclamation mark. Hermione firmly opposed this. But under Ron's nonsense, Hermione had to give in and decided to go to Hagrid's hut with everyone during the morning break to witness the birth of the little dragon. When the first class of the morning, the herbology class, was over, the bell rang in Hogwarts Castle, and Harry, Ron, Hermione and Irina threw down the shovel and ran straight to Hagrid's hut. What surprised Hermione was that Irina, who usually liked to slack off in everything she did, was more active than anyone else this time. It seems that Irina really likes small animals, Hermione thought. However, after staying with Irina for a long time, she seemed to be assimilated by Irina, and she even forgot that the fire dragon was not a small animal at all. At this time, Hagrid greeted them. He looked rosy and very excited. It's coming out soon, Hagrid said excitedly, welcoming Irina and others into the house. Irina just walked into the house and found that the dragon egg was placed on a square iron sheet, and the iron sheet was spewing flames continuously. Oh, this was given to me by one of your seniors. It can perfectly simulate the environment for the hatching of fire dragons, Hagrid introduced happily, after noticing Irina's gaze. Irina said hesitantly, Hagrid, the senior you mentioned, is his last name Luoer? Hagrid was a little surprised. Yes, do you know him? Irina pondered. It was indeed that senior Luoer, but how did he know about the fire dragon? Was he a prophet, or was he the same as herself? Just when Irina doubted Lin En's identity, the movement of the dragon egg attracted her attention. The dragon egg was lying on the iron sheet, and suddenly a deep crack appeared on it. Something inside was constantly moving, and a very interesting clicking sound came out. As if sensing that the fire dragon was about to hatch, the flames on the iron sheet dissipated by themselves. At this time, everyone moved their chairs closer to the table, holding their breath and watching closely. Suddenly, with a sharp scraping sound, the dragon egg cracked. I saw a little fire dragon swaying and flapping on the iron sheet. It was not beautiful, but looked like a wrinkled black umbrella. Its thorny wings looked particularly large compared to its thin black body. It also had a long nose with white nostrils, horns on its head, and orange eyes protruding outward. The little fire dragon sneezed, and a few sparks came out of its nose. It's beautiful, isn't it? Hagrid murmured. He stretched out a hand and touched the little fire dragon's head, but the little fire dragon turned its head and bit his finger, revealing its sharp long teeth. Hagrid didn't feel any pain at all, but said excitedly, oh my god, look, it knows its mother. Harry and Ron couldn't help rolling their eyes. Look at this little fire dragon with a fierce face, as if it was going to swallow Hagrid. Do you think it thinks you are its mother? Exclamation mark. Just when Harry and Ron were afraid to approach the little dragon, because of its dangerous appearance, Irina came forward with joy. How cute. Little dragon, give me a hug. Irina's eyes seemed to have 2 little hearts. She grabbed the little dragon and put it in her arms and gently stroked it. Irina, be careful. Seeing this, Hagrid was shocked and quickly stretched out his hand to stop Irina. Although Hagrid always called some dangerous magical animals cute, he also knew that the attacks of these magical animals were fatal to young wizards, and the same was true for the dragon's fangs. Maybe it was no big deal for this little dragon to bite Hagrid, but with Irina's delicate body, if she was bitten, she might have to lie in the hospital. If the bite was in the wrong place, she might even have to lie on the board. Just when Hagrid was extremely worried, the performance of the little dragon made him stunned. The little dragon was lying comfortably in Irina's arms, showing an expression of enjoyment. After seeing Hagrid, it deliberately rubbed Irina's chest with its head, and then spit a small ball of flame at Hagrid. Not only Hagrid, but even Harry, Ron and Hermione were stunned. Good guy, this is a double standard little dragon. Why? Hagrid wanted to cry, but had no tears. Irina could touch it casually, and it enjoyed it very much, but he just touched it, and was bitten fiercely by it. Can the difference not be so big? Exclamation mark. Hermione stood next to Irina, and raised her head. Just because my Irina is beautiful. The little dragon seemed to like Irina and Hermione very much. They still kissed, hugged, and lifted him up, but when Harry and Ron just came over, the little dragon breathed on them. If Harry and Ron got closer, the little dragon would probably bite them. Stroking the little dragon, Irina looked at Hagrid and asked, "By the way, Hagrid, did that senior owl give you this alchemical product?" Hagrid nodded first, then shook his head. "It's not for free. He needs a tube of blood from this little dragon, but in addition, he also gave me a place for the little dragon to live," Hagrid said, taking out the suitcase. Hermione stuck her head into the suitcase, and after seeing the space inside, she couldn't help but exclaimed, "Is this a traceless stretch spell? But it's illegal to use the traceless stretch spell privately, right?" Hagrid explained. "Raoul said this is alchemy, not a traceless stretch spell." Hermione nodded, and said, "But even if there is such a space, I'm afraid the little dragon can't live for too long. When the little dragon grows up, this space will not be able to accommodate it." Just as Hermione was discussing the life of the little dragon, Hagrid's face suddenly changed. Hagrid's face turned pale, and he jumped up and ran to the window. "What's going on?" Harry asked in confusion. Hagrid was a little breathless. Someone just peeked through the gap in the curtains. It was a boy. He was running to school. Hearing this, the four of them immediately ran to the door and looked out. They saw Malfoy running fast with his back to them, with a malicious smile on his face. "This book has been sent to the editor. Because the data is too bad, there is no recommendation position. It's very uncomfortable. But I'll finish it normally. About 200,000 words will be put on the shelves, and I beg everyone to support it." Chapter 67 Sending Charmander Away, Lin En's Promise. Seeing this, Irina hurriedly chased out the door, intending to stop Malfoy. Although she planned to let Ron's brother Charlie, who worked at the dragon farm, take Charmander away like in the original book, she still hoped to see Charmander more before it left, and send it away before the final exam. Looking at Malfoy's back, Irina raised her hand and cast a freezing spell. The ice blue beam broke through the air, and went straight to Malfoy. Turning his head, and seeing Malfoy attacking from behind, he was so scared, that his soul was scared out of his wits. In his heart, Irina was already an extremely terrifying existence. He subconsciously rolled over and coincidentally avoided the freezing spell. However, this rolling made him fall to the ground, which prevented Malfoy from continuing to run away. "You must not have seen anything, Malfoy." Irina showed a kind smile, and looked at Malfoy, but her eyes made Malfoy shudder. Malfoy was so scared, that he said quickly, "I didn't see anything." "Really?" Irina held her head with her hands pretending to think, and then seemed to think of something, and said with a smile, "Oh, I know a way to make you forget everything you saw. How about it? Forgetfulness." Irina raised her wand, and put the index finger of her left hand under her lips. "What is the spell? Let me think. Forget everything." Before Irina could finish the spell, Hermione thought that Irina was really going to attack Malfoy, so she quickly stopped Irina. "Are you crazy? It is illegal to use the forgetfulness spell on others privately." Although Irina didn't finish her words, the purpose of scaring Malfoy had been achieved. Malfoy looked at Irina with horror in his eyes. At this time, he wanted to slap himself in the face. Why did he meddle in other people's business? And he was meddling in the business of Irina, the female devil. Exclamation mark. "Oh, what a pity." Little Hermione begged for mercy. "I can only let you go with reluctance." Irina deliberately pretended to be regretful, "but if I find out that what happened today is known to others, then..." Hearing this, Malfoy hurriedly said loudly, "I promise not to tell anyone, I swear." "Oh." Irina opened her eyes wide. "So you really saw it?" Irina said, and raised the wand in her hand again. Seeing this, Malfoy was so scared that his eyelids rolled up and he fainted directly. Okay, Irina, he has been scared to death. At this time, Hermione also understood that Irina did not really mean to do anything to Malfoy. She said with a smile. Irina spread her hands. It's really scary. At this time, Harry and Ron came over with admiration on their faces, and Ron said, I'm afraid only you, Irina, can scare Malfoy like this. I think Professor Snape can do it too. Irina tilted her head cutely. Putchy. Harry couldn't help laughing. That's right. After returning to Hagrid's hut, Hermione looked at the lively little dragon and said, Hagrid, this is not a solution. We have to send it away. Hearing Hermione's words, Hagrid exclaimed, no, absolutely not. It's still so small, it will die. Charlie. Irina said, if I remember correctly, Ron's brother Charlie works in a dragon farm in Romania. I think we can let Charlie take the little dragon and raise it back to the wild environment after it grows up. Ron, who was almost bitten by the little dragon because of his irritation, was the first to agree. Great. How about this plan, Hagrid? Although Hagrid was very reluctant to part with the little dragon, the cruel reality forced him to make up his mind to send the little dragon away. He agreed that everyone would send an owl to ask Charlie. In the next week, Malfoy was like a mouse seeing a cat when he saw Irina, and he didn't dare to look into her eyes at all. On Wednesday night, Hedwig slapped the dark window. Harry quickly put it in and opened the note it brought. After seeing the note, Irina, Hermione and Ron also came over. Dear Ron, how are you? Thank you for writing to me. I'm very happy to adopt the Norwegian Ridgeback, but it's not easy to get it here. I think the best way is to send it to some friends of mine who are coming to visit me next week. The trouble is that they must not be seen to be carrying a Norwegian dragon illegally. Can you take the Ridgeback to the highest tower at midnight on Saturday? They can meet you there and take the dragon away before dark. Please reply to me as soon as possible. Love you, Charlie. After reading the note, Harry looked up and said, it's not difficult, is it? With the suitcase, we don't have to worry about the little dragon making any noise, and the invisibility cloak can get us there safely. Everyone nodded, thinking that there was no problem, so Harry wrote a reply and asked Hedwig, who had just returned and had not had time to rest, to go out again. This made Hedwig so angry that she pecked Harry several times before she left indignantly. Flames. At this moment, Irina suddenly raised her wand, and a ball of flame burst out from the top of the wand, burning Charlie's letter. We can't keep this letter. If someone sees it, it might affect our actions, Irina said. Saturday night, Harry and others came to Hagrid's hut. They unexpectedly found that the door of the hut was open and the lights were on inside. As they walked into the hut, they saw a boy standing in front of Hagrid. Hagrid, who is he? Harry asked subconsciously. Hagrid introduced. He is the Rowell I told you about before. I asked him to come here because I promised him to give him a tube of Charmander's blood. After hearing that Lin was the senior from Slytherin, Harry and Ron immediately looked alert and looked at Lin solemnly. Irina and Hermione were kind-hearted. Hermione even stepped forward and said, thank you, Senior O, for saving me on Halloween. After learning that it was Lin's healing medicine that saved her on Halloween, Hermione wanted to thank Lin in person, but they never had the chance to meet. Lin nodded slightly to them, then looked at Hagrid. I'm very happy to be able to fulfill our previous agreement. Where is Charmander? Hagrid opened the suitcase in front of him. As early as more than a week ago, this small room was not enough for Charmander, so Charmander had been living in the space inside the suitcase for a week. Chapter 68. The Forbidden Forest incident begins. After letting the little dragon out, Hagrid personally drew a tube of blood for the little dragon, and then returned the needle to Lin. The contract is completed. Thank you very much. Lin nodded with a smile after receiving the needle. Seeing Hagrid put the little dragon back into the suitcase, Lin, who was in a good mood, took the initiative to say, are you going to send it away? I can go with you. If there is any emergency, I can also help solve it. Hearing Lin's words, Harry and Ron wanted to decline, and Harry said, sorry senior, I'm afraid our invisibility cloak can't fit 4 people. Lin waved his wand, and his figure disappeared on the spot, and his casual voice came out, it's okay, I have the disillusionment charm. After that, Lin's figure reappeared. Irina and Hermione readily agreed. With such a powerful senior to help, they naturally wanted it. As for Harry and Ron, who still had aversion to Slytherin, they saw that their two companions agreed, so they no longer objected. So the five of them left Hagrid's hut and headed for the tallest tower at night. Since Irina burned Charlie's letter with a fire spell after reading it, the letter was not obtained by Malfoy, and Malfoy's trouble naturally did not happen. The five of them walked up the spiral staircase smoothly and came to the top of the tower. After about 10 minutes, 4 flying brooms flew from a distance, and the owners of these 4 flying brooms also came to the top of the tower. They were all Charlie's friends. After learning that the little dragon was placed in a suitcase blessed with alchemy, these Charlie's friends were all surprised. Not to mention how much trouble they could save with the suitcase. The attached suitcase alone had a good value. One of the men hung the suitcase on the back of his flying broom, and then said goodbye to everyone happily, and these Charlie's friends left soon. However, just as everyone walked down the spiral staircase smoothly and stepped into the corridor, an accident happened. As soon as everyone walked into the corridor, Filch's face appeared from the darkness. Lin sensed that there were people in the corridor in advance, so he subconsciously cast the disillusionment charm on himself before entering the corridor, which saved him from being discovered by Filch. But Irina and the other 3 were in trouble. They didn't know the disillusionment charm, and their invisibility cloaks accidentally fell on the top of the tower. Irina was especially upset. She knew that this would happen, but she forgot about the invisibility cloak because she was thinking about Charmander. Filch led the 4 unwilling people to Professor McGonagall's study. The 4 of them were Gryffindor students, so naturally they had to be dealt with by Professor McGonagall, the head of Gryffindor. I feel very angry. 4 students don't sleep in one night. I have never heard of such a thing before. Professor McGonagall said angrily. Don't worry, there are more than 4 students who don't sleep every night. Irina complained in her heart. Professor McGonagall looked at the 4 people with a stern look, and she spoke angrily. Especially you two, Miss Lovell and Miss Granger. I thought you were very clear-headed. As for you, Mr. Potter and Mr. Weasley, I thought you all valued the honor of Gryffindor very much. All 4 of you will be put in detention. Moreover, Gryffindor will be deducted 50 points. 50 points each. Professor McGonagall looked like a roaring lioness, losing 200 points in a flash. Even Irina was stunned. You know, in the original book, Malfoy's trouble also caused Slytherin to be deducted 50 points, and Ron was bitten, so that he did not participate in this action. But now, Slytherin did not lose points, but Gryffindor was deducted 50 points, which directly widened the gap between the 2 colleges. It seems that at the end of this semester, even Professor Dumbledore can't add their points back. Irina thought helplessly. After all, in the original book, with the extra points from Professor Dumbledore, Gryffindor only led Slytherin by 10 points. This time, the 100 points of the school were lost, and it was impossible to add them back, even if there was one more Irina. After being punished, Irina and others were driven out of the study by Professor McGonagall. The next day, after learning that they were the culprit who caused the school's points to be deducted by 200 points, Harry and the other 4 immediately became the target of Gryffindor. Harry, Ron and Hermione all felt sad and ashamed, but Irina still maintained her original pace of life. Harry was puzzled by this. Let me ask you, Harry, do you regret sending the little dragon away? Irina asked in the face of Harry's doubts. Harry shook his head. Of course he didn't regret it. If he didn't send the little dragon away, then the little dragon would have no place to live one day. Once the little dragon was discovered, what awaited it was the auras of the Ministry of Magic who took it away and skinned it to become a pile of magic materials. Irina spread her hands. In that case, why should we be sad? As for the house points, I think if you two are willing to study hard, it will not be difficult to add the house points back. After all, Hermione and I have added more than 100 points to Gryffindor this semester. Hearing this, Harry and Ron looked at each other. The guilt towards other classmates made them determined to study hard. But just over a week later, the 2 of them, who were hard to change their nature, started to live a bad life again. Time passed quickly, and soon it was the last week before the final exam. And at breakfast on this day, Harry, Ron, Hermione and Irina received exactly the same note, which said, "Your detention starts at 11 o'clock tonight. Find Mr. Filch in the hallway." The signer was Professor McGonagall. Seeing this scene, Irina understood that the Forbidden Forest incident was about to begin. Irina knew that they would face Voldemort, who was possessed by Quirrell, next. Fortunately, Malfoy was not there this time, otherwise, with a pig teammate, their efforts would be in vain. At night, the four of them came to the entrance hall and followed Filch out of Hogwarts Castle. Filch kept muttering along the way, full of malice. Soon, everyone passed through the dark environment, came to the Forbidden Forest, and met Hagrid. After handing the four people over to Hagrid, Filch left. At this moment, an unexpected person appeared. "Senior All, why are you here?" Irina asked in surprise. A figure appeared out of thin air. It was obvious that Lin En had cast a layer of disillusionment spell on himself before. Lin En said concisely, "The last time you were caught, I left early. As compensation, I will accompany you in your confinement punishment this time. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket. By the way, are there really no more people joining our book club? As long as there are 30 people, the lottery will start. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Masked Man, MK2 Grenade Explosion. Lin En planned to go with Irina and others, not because of any guilt, but because he knew that Voldemort, who was possessed by Quirrell, would enter the Forbidden Forest tonight to hunt unicorns and extend his life. In order to weaken the opponent's combat power in the battle against Quirrell and Voldemort at the end of the school year, Lin En planned to prevent the opponent from absorbing the blood of unicorns. However, Lin En did not know where Quirrell was in the Forbidden Forest. If he relied on himself to find it, it would be no different from a headless fly. The fact that Lin En followed Harry to find the mirror of their eyes during the Christmas holiday gave Lin En inspiration. As long as he followed the protagonists in the original book, Quirrell would naturally come to him. "Thank you for your help, Senior." Irina's eyes lit up. She witnessed how Lin En used those alchemical products to kill trolls. Even the tall trolls could be defeated, which showed how powerful Lin En was. Hagrid on the side was hesitant to speak. Strictly speaking, Lin En's behavior had violated school rules. After all, Lin En was not punished, but came to the Forbidden Forest alone. He didn't know whether he should stop the other party. As if seeing Hagrid's hesitation, Lin En said, "Hagrid, you know the dangers of the Forbidden Forest. My magic level is not low, and I can help." Hagrid originally wanted to refuse Lin En, but when he thought that there were still villains in the Forbidden Forest who hurt unicorns, and Lin En could indeed help a lot, he finally agreed to let Lin En stay. "Okay, Mr. All, then please follow me closely," Hagrid said. Hagrid led everyone to the inside of the Forbidden Forest and introduced the current situation to them. "Now listen carefully, what we are going to do tonight is very dangerous. I don't want anyone to be in danger. Look over there, do you see that shining thing on the ground? Silvery white. That's unicorn blood." Hagrid pointed to the blood as white as moonlight on the ground from a distance. Seeing the unicorn blood on the ground, Irina's eyes showed pity. Hagrid continued, "A unicorn in the Forbidden Forest was injured by something, and it was seriously injured. This is the second time this week. I found a dead unicorn last Wednesday. We must try to find the poor unicorn and help it get rid of its pain." After walking for a while, Hagrid stopped. "Next, we will split into two groups. Hermione and Ron will go with me, and Harry, Irina and Mr. Owl will go with Fang. If anyone finds a unicorn, they will shoot green sparks, and if they are in trouble, they will shoot red sparks. Do you understand?" Hagrid said to everyone. Fang was the hound under Hagrid's feet. From Irina, Hagrid learned that Lin had a strong magical power, so he put Harry and Lin in a group, hoping that Lin could ensure Harry's safety in the Forbidden Forest. Lin and Irina had no objection, and Harry looked at Ron and Hermione. After the two nodded, Harry walked towards Lin. After watching Hagrid and the other two leave, Lin gently waved his wand, and dozens of metal blocks flew out of the canvas bag he had cast the Traceless Stretch spell on. floating around him, and floating up and down. These metal blocks were his all-chemical floating guns, which he used to kill the trolls on Halloween. What is this? Harry was shocked by these all-chemical floating guns. Irina's eyes were sparkling, and she saw with her own eyes that one of the all-chemical floating guns shot the troll's head. Lin said concisely, all chemical weapons are used to deal with possible dangers that may occur next. Harry looked at Lin half doubtfully, and then came over. The three of them walked towards the depths of the Forbidden Forest with Ye. After walking for more than half an hour, they went deeper and deeper into the Forbidden Forest. The bloodstains of the unicorn on the ground became more and more dense. Irina saw a lot of blood splashed on the roots of a crooked tree, as if the poor unicorn had struggled painfully nearby. At this time, everyone found a clearing behind the tangled branches of an ancient oak tree. The scene in the clearing shocked everyone. They saw a white object glittering on the ground. It was a unicorn. They had never seen such a beautiful creature, but it was dead. Its slender legs remained in the position when it fell, stretched straight and unnaturally. Its sideburns were spread on the dark leaves, as white as pearls. Seeing this scene, Lin En and Irina's hearts sank at the same time. Obviously, there was only one kind of magic that could cause such a death, and that was the Kadabra, one of the 3 unforgivable curses. At the same time, a rustling sound rang out, and a hooded figure flashed out from the shadows in the distance. The owner of the figure slowly crawled on the ground, like a wild beast. The cloaked figure came to the unicorn, and lowered his head to suck the unicorn's blood from the wound on the side of the corpse. Seeing this, Harry and Irina covered their mouths tightly, and watched the scene in disbelief. Seeing this sacred creature being humiliated after being killed, Irina's eyes were a little wet, and she looked very angry. Lin En saw an ice blue light flashing in the palm of Irina's left hand, and he felt that the temperature around him was dropping. But just when Irina was about to cast a freezing spell and attack the masked man, Lin En reached out to stop her, and shook his head at her. Under Irina's puzzled eyes, Lin En reached his left hand into his pocket. Then, Irina's eyes became horrified, and she saw Lin En took out a round pineapple-shaped object from his pocket. What the hell? Exclamation mark. Grenade? Exclamation mark. Irina looked at Senior Luo beside her with horror. Why does Senior Luo have a weapon like a grenade in his hand? Exclamation mark. This is totally unreasonable. Under Irina's gaze, Lin waved his wand and cast a sound blocking spell on the MK2 grenade, then pulled out the safety pin of the MK2 grenade and threw it towards the masked man. Since the magic blocked the sound of the MK2 grenade, and the MK2 grenade did not emit light like the spell, the masked man did not notice the grenade flying behind him. In fact, if it was Voldemort's real body here, then with the super perception of the Demon King level wizard, the other party would be able to easily perceive the grenade. Unfortunately, Voldemort himself was still a remnant soul, and the possessed Quirrell did not have that ability. The MK2 grenade fell at the feet of the masked man and exploded, and the terrifying flames and airwaves spread out at a lightning speed. A violent explosion sounded, and even the spell could not cover it up. Chapter 70, The End of the Fiery Fire and the Myriad Curses. Not only that, this MK2 grenade is also a kind of fragmentation grenade in a strict sense. A large number of shrapnel broke apart and hit the masked man less than 1 meter away from it like a hail of bullets. The sound of shrapnel piercing flesh and blood rang out, and blood mist exploded on the back of the masked man, and the screams of the masked man were also heard. Waste. Waste. Voldemort cursed Quirrell madly, but he was also a little panicked in his heart. You know, this is not an ordinary grenade, this is in Wang Wen's poem. This is a grenade enchanted by Lin En's alchemy. With the blessing of the alchemy array, the power of this grenade increased geometrically, and the terrifying flames burned the masked man, that is, Quirrell's body, and the huge airwave and the fragments lifted Quirrell's body away. Thanks to Quirrell who stood in front and took all the fragments with his body, the fallen unicorn body was not destroyed by the grenade. Arsehole. Quirrell's hoarse voice came, and the pain from behind made him almost unable to stand. But at this moment, Quirrell's eyes rolled up, and a strange breath spread from his body. Obviously, this was Voldemort's possession. Avada Kedavra. As soon as Voldemort controlled Quirrell's body, he quickly turned around and cast a killing curse in the direction of Lin's original direction. The tearing of the wound caused by the rotation of the body made Quirrell's body instinctively wailing in pain, but Voldemort didn't care about it at all. He was angry and decided to tear these damn sneak attackers into pieces. On the other side, Lin had changed his position after throwing the grenade, which allowed him to avoid Voldemort's killing curse. However, when Quirrell turned around, Harry felt a sharp pain piercing his head. He fell down in pain, and the scar on his forehead seemed to be on fire, which blurred his vision and staggered back. Fang, carry Harry to find Hagrid and the others. Irina quickly pulled out her wand and shot a red spark into the sky, then instructed Fang. After the spark was shot, Irina lay down on the ground without hesitation, not caring that the mud on the ground had stained her clothes and face. A Cruciatus curse flew over Irina's head dangerously. If Irina hadn't reacted in time, she would have been hit. Fang flipped Harry onto herself and ran away quickly. Irina rolled over and swung her left hand, and a beam of ice blue light flew towards Quirrell. Not far away, a ball of fire turned into a venomous snake and rushed towards Quirrell, tightly clinging to the ground, while dozens of alchemical floating cannons around Lin began to accumulate power. Break to pieces. Expelliarmus. Thunderbolt explosion. While controlling the flames with his left hand, Lin's right hand holding the wand was not idle either. A series of highly offensive spells turned into beams of light and headed straight for Quirrell. Armor protect. Facing the joint attack of Lin and Irina, Voldemort's face turned livid, but he had no choice but to cast an armor spell. Although Voldemort was not afraid of these spells at all, Quirrell was not. If Quirrell died, he would only return to the state of a residual soul. The invisible shield blocked Irina's freezing spell and all of Lin's spells, and the fire snake that was close to the ground and was about to attack was stopped by Voldemort's control of Quirrell with a spell. Avada Kedavra. Voldemort controlled Quirrell to wave his wand again, and another beam of light emitting a faint green light shot towards Lin. Even though it was Quirrell's body, Avada Kedavra, Voldemort's famous skill, was still extremely terrifying when used by him. The flying speed of this green beam was extremely fast, and even Lin En could not dodge it in time. There was no other way, so Lin En had to control an all-chemical floating cannon in front of him to block the Kedavra curse. An explosion sounded, and this green beam bombarded the all-chemical floating cannon, blowing it into pieces. Looking at the broken all-chemical floating cannon, Lin En's heart was full of distress. You know, these all-chemical floating cannons are all chemical products made by Nicholas Flamel himself, and these are used one less. Just when Lin En was hesitating whether to take out the trump card of the forbidden magic fire, Irina's attack frequency increased greatly. Damn it, you dare to hurt even a cute and holy creature like a unicorn. Voldemort, you really have no heart. Irina muttered in her mouth, and she was angry, and ignored the intense consumption of magic power. She shot left and right. Her left hand kept waving, and her right hand was also controlling the wand. The freezing spell was like a laser cannon, constantly flying out of Irina's hands, turning into a sky full of ice blue beams that blasted towards Quirrell. At the same time, the dozens of alchemical floating cannons around Lin En also completed charging, and dozens of golden beams turned into meteors all over the sky, spreading towards Quirrell like a hail of bullets. Even a powerful wizard like Voldemort could hardly resist such a fierce attack while controlling Quirrell. This storm-like attack made Voldemort strongly suspect that the one facing him was not a first or second year wizard at all, but a whole group of auras. No, that's not right. I'm afraid even a whole group of auras can't launch such an attack. Fiend-Fi. Looking at the beams all over the sky, Voldemort's heart was ruthless, and he directly controlled Quirrell to release a large area of Fiend-Fi. You know, Fiend-Fire is a kind of magic fire that can become stronger and stronger. These fires can mimic the forms of some monsters and chase almost all burning objects regardless of friend or foe. Even Voldemort has to use the powerful spell of End of All Curses to extinguish Fiend-Fi. Seeing this, Lin En was shocked. Although he has a strong affinity for fire, he has no idea whether he can control this kind of Fiend-Fi that is like a thorn in the flesh. Freeze the ground and chill the sky. Irina shot out another ice blue beam of light, hitting the Fiend-Fire in the distance. However, this freezing spell could not stop the expansion of Fiend-Fire at all, and the terrifying Fiend-Fire continued to attack here. No matter what, forbidden magic fire. Lin En gritted his teeth and swung his left hand. A flame with black lines that looked a bit like fiendfire gradually grew larger and eventually turned into a huge fireball with a diameter of 5 meters. This huge fireball is already half of his inventory. The forbidden magic fire rushed towards the direction of the fiendfire. The power of the fiendfire to devour everything collided with the power of the forbidden magic fire to seal magic, and they actually formed a confrontation. Seeing this, Voldemort controlled Quirrell to release the fiendfire again, and the more powerful fiendfire rushed towards Lin and Irina. These fiendfire immediately forced Lin's forbidden magic fire back, and Lin had to take back his forbidden magic fire. Just when Lin and Irina were a little desperate, several gentle but slightly stern voices came from behind them. All curses are over. Once again, I invite everyone to join our book club. The group number is 458,582,079, and the password is 1990. Welcome everyone to join our big family. When the group has 30 people, the author will start a lucky draw. Thank you for your support. Chapter 71. He saved my life twice. An invisible wave of magic power spread out, and the terrifying fiendfire was extinguished in an instant after it touched the wave of magic power. Lin and Irina turned around suddenly and saw Professor McGonagall, Professor Sprout, Professor Flitwick and Professor Snape. The 4 deans of the college appeared behind them, looking at Voldemort, who possessed Quirrell in the distance with vigilant eyes. Children, get behind us. Professor Sprout's soft voice came, and she pulled Lin and Irina behind her. The other 3 professors took action. Professor Flitwick raised his hand and cast a silent disarming spell, while Professor McGonagall waved his wand and transformed the dead branches and leaves at his feet into dozens of tigers and lions, rushing towards Quirrell. Even Professor Snape did not hesitate to use his magic power and shot a series of sharp and shadowless attacks towards Quirrell. Seeing that the 4 deans of the college had arrived, Voldemort also realized that he had lost the best opportunity. Thunder explosion. Voldemort controlled Quirrell and almost exhausted the magic power in Quirrell's body. The explosion spell with a terrifying aura broke through the air and suddenly hit the ground not far ahead. The soil exploded, and the dust in the sky was swept by the air wave and rushed towards the crowd. The smoke from the explosion enveloped the entire open space. The explosion spell blew the animals transformed by Professor McGonagall into pieces, and even the spells of Professor Flitwick and Professor Snape were blocked by the gravel and soil in the air. Facing the venue surrounded by thick fog, the 4 professors did not dare to pursue rashly. After all, their students were still here, and they could not ignore the safety of the students. The 4 professors stood back to back, surrounded Lin and Irina in the middle, and watched everything around them vigilantly. After an unknown amount of time, the smoke dissipated, and Quirrell disappeared. Irina looked at the professors who protected her, and was immediately moved. They were really responsible and good professors. Even Professor Snape made people feel safe. I'm sorry, Miss Lovell, I didn't know there would be a dark wizard here. Professor McGonagall turned around and looked at Irina with some guilt. She thought that there was only some magical animal causing trouble in the Forbidden Forest, so she planned to let Irina and Harry come to the Forbidden Forest to follow Hagrid to broaden their horizons, but she never expected that the culprit for the death of the unicorn was actually the unforgivable Dark Wizard. Irina shook her head and said, "It's okay, Professor, we are fine. Thanks to Senior Aluo's fire, otherwise." As she said that, Irina seemed to realize something and immediately shut up. The forbidden magic fire used by Lin En just now is obviously not an ordinary fire spell. After all, how can an ordinary fire spell be equal to the fierce fire? Exclamation mark. In this way, that kind of fire must be Lin En's bottom line means. The other party even used this trump card, but she. Thinking of this, Irina subconsciously looked at Lin En with an apologetic look in her eyes. Feeling Irina's gaze, Lin En shook his head and said that it was okay. Although the forbidden fire was one of his trump cards, it was an alchemical method that Lin En obtained from Nicholas Flamel. If Dumbledore wanted to know, then the other party would definitely know his details through Nicholas Flamel, so Lin En had no need to hide it from the professors of Hogwarts. As long as the forbidden fire, this trump card, was not discovered by Voldemort or the Death Eaters before the battle against Voldemort at the end of the school year, then Lin En's goal would be achieved. After all, one of the purposes of researching the forbidden fire was to suppress the residual soul of Voldemort after leaving Quirrell's body, and the trump card used was not a trump card, but an open card. As for the battle just now, the forbidden fire only demonstrated its ability to compete with the fiend fire, and its power to seal magic power was not yet perceived by Voldemort. Until then, Professor McGonagall noticed Lin. She said sternly, "Mr. O, I think it should be curfew time now." Lin whispered, "Sorry, Professor, I know I violated the school rules." Seeing that Professor McGonagall seemed to want to punish Lin, Irina quickly pleaded for Lin. Irina looked at Professor McGonagall with tears in her eyes, and her voice became cute. "Professor, don't blame Senior Rao. If it weren't for him, I'm afraid I would have been burned to ashes by that terrifying flame. He saved my life twice. Alas, because Mr. Rao violated the school rules, Slytherin will be deducted 50 points, but because Mr. Rao saved his classmates, Slytherin will be added 50 points. As for the punishment of confinement, it will be waived." Professor McGonagall shook her head and decided to offset the merits and demerits. "Wait, Miss Lowell." Professor McGonagall suddenly raised her head, as if she had noticed something. "You just said that Mr. Owl saved your life twice?" Before Irina could speak, Lin stood up, nodded slightly, and said, "I also killed the troll on Halloween last time." Hearing this, not only Professor McGonagall, but the other 3 professors all looked over in shock. Especially Professor Snape, who had checked all the senior Slytherin students at the time, but couldn't find a qualified one. He never expected that this Slytherin student who could kill the troll alone was just a second-year wizard. "You mean, you killed that troll?" Professor Snape's face was close to Lin, and his low tone brought endless pressure. Lin nodded calmly. Although it was unbelievable that a second-year wizard could kill a troll, with Irina's testimony, the 4 professors had to believe this fact. "Well, come back to the castle with us, kids." Professor McGonagall felt like her head was about to explode. First she met a dark wizard today, and then she got such explosive news, which made her CPU a little overloaded. Irina asked, "Where are Harry and the others?" Professor McGonagall said, "Hagrid's Hound Fang carried Harry to find Hagrid, and after we discovered the situation here, we asked Hagrid to take them back first." Irina breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good." After returning to Hogwarts Castle, Lin followed his dean, Professor Snape, and left, while Irina returned to the Gryffindor common room, and saw Harry and the other 2 who looked anxious. "Irina, are you okay? I heard from Harry that you met a terrible dark wizard." Hermione threw herself into Irina's arms, her eyes full of tears. "You know, she almost lost her best friend." Irina was still frightened. "She's still alive, but she almost died." Chapter 72. I really want to see her again, even just for one look. Irina's words frightened the 3 of them. Hermione checked her body carefully, and was relieved after confirming that she was not injured. "Irina, what happened next?" Harry asked impatiently. Irina told him what happened next. Of course, she concealed the fact that Lin En used the forbidden magic fire. That senior LUOR is so powerful. Of course, Irina, you are also very powerful. I didn't expect that you could fight back and forth with a dark wizard of this level. Hermione exclaimed. Unlike Harry and Ron, Hermione was well protected by Irina. She didn't have much aversion to Slytherin except Malfoy. Therefore, after learning about Lin En's situation, she immediately showed her admiration. Harry asked in confusion, "By the way, why did that dark wizard kill unicorns? He seemed to want to drink unicorn blood." Hearing this, Irina lowered her eyes, and she was a little depressed. She just explained, because the blood of a unicorn can prolong a person's life. However, killing a pure, weak and helpless life like a unicorn is an extremely cruel thing. Only those who have nothing but want to get everything will commit such a heinous crime. Therefore, from the moment the unicorn's blood touches that person's lips, he will have a half-dead life, a life that is cursed forever. Harry was incredible. But why? If you are cursed for the rest of your life, you might as well die, right? Irina shook her head, still a little sad. Having said that, what if that person just wants to use it to prolong his life? Don't forget, there is something in Hogwarts Castle that can fully restore his magic and life, a thing that can make him immortal. Sorcerer's Stone. Hermione exclaimed. She seemed to understand something. Irina nodded and said, yes. If that person has been dormant for more than 10 years and is eager to make a comeback. You mean? Ron also exclaimed, you know who? Hearing the words of the three people, Harry felt as if an iron claw suddenly grabbed his heart. He remembered what Hagrid once said to him, some people say he is dead, but I think that is pure nonsense. I'm afraid that he has not much humanity left, so he is unlikely to be willing to die. I understand. Harry shouted, Snape wants to get the Philosopher's Stone for Voldemort. Voldemort is waiting in the Forbidden Forest. We thought Snape just wanted to make a fortune with the Philosopher's Stone. Irina held her forehead again. No way. Can you let Snape take the blame for this? No, Harry, I think you misunderstood. Irina said helplessly, I'm afraid Professor Snape is innocent. When we almost died, Professor Snape and 3 other professors came out to protect us. He should be a good person. Hearing Irina's words, Harry was stunned and fell into self-doubt. Who else could it be besides Snape? Exclamation mark. Quirrell? Exclamation mark. Harry thought so. Just as Harry was thinking wildly, Irina interrupted his thinking. But no matter what, that person will definitely come to steal the Philosopher's Stone, right? That's right. Harry suddenly realized it. As long as they can protect the Philosopher's Stone, it doesn't matter who comes, right? On the other side, Professor Snape did not let Lin En go back to the dormitory to sleep, but took him to his office. So, you killed the troll on Halloween. Professor Snape looked directly at Lin En and said softly, yes, Professor. Lin En nodded. Well, Professor Snape's voice was like a ghost, assuming that what you said is true. Then please tell me, Mr. Rawle, how did you kill the troll? Looking at Professor Snape, who was like a big bat with bared fangs and claws, Lin remained calm. If you have asked Professor Dumbledore, I think you should know that I have studied alchemy, and my master is Mr. Nicholas Flamel. Hearing this, Professor Snape was stunned. He really didn't know about this. Alchemy aside, how do you explain the traces of fire at the scene? I don't think a second-year wizard can release such a powerful fire spell. Professor Snape stared at Lin's eyes, as if trying to see something. Lin raised his left hand, and a ball of fire ignited out of thin air. What if this is the case? Lin said softly. Silent and wandless casting? Seeing this, even Professor Snape was not calm. A wizard who can cast spells without a wand, and without a sound, has at least the combat power of an elite aura, and it is not surprising that an elite aura can cast such a fire spell. However, how could a second-year wizard learn to cast spells without a sound, and without a wand? Exclamation mark. Even he himself learned to cast spells without a sound, and without a wand, when he was in his 20s. After realizing that he had lost his composure, Professor Snape quickly pretended to be arrogant. You are worthy of being a genius student of Slytherin, Mr. Rao. Lin was neither humble nor arrogant. I can't say I'm a genius, but I just work a little harder than my peers. At this time, Lin's importance in Professor Snape's heart has been raised by several levels. Faced with such a rare genius student in a century, he naturally hopes to train him well. You can go back, Mr. Rao. After letting out a long breath, Professor Snape's voice was still cold, but it seemed much softer than before. Professor, good night. Lin leaned forward slightly and then left Professor Snape's office. After the door of his office was closed, Professor Snape was thoughtful. With such talent, I'm afraid Dumbledore was no more than that when he was young. If he can be trained well, he will definitely achieve something in the future. But, is he the future hope of the wizarding world, or a new storm? Professor Snape lowered his head and pondered. He thought of Voldemort, who was also gifted when he was young. Since he would kill the troll for a classmate he didn't know, and even face a powerful dark wizard, his nature should not be bad. As long as the acquired training is in place and he doesn't go astray, then the future. Oh, let the future worry about the future. By then, he should be old, and when Voldemort dies completely, then he may be able to truly atone for his sins. I really want to see her again. Even if it's just one look. Professor Snape saw a photo frame not far away, and in the photo frame was a young girl with crimson hair. Please recommend, reward and monthly ticket. By the way, have you all invested in this book? As long as you read for 10 minutes on the same day, you can automatically invest and get free book coins. Even if you just hang out here for 10 minutes, it will work. Chapter 73. You may have transformed into a human after practicing the truth serum. Soon, the day of the final exam came. The atmosphere in the entire Hogwarts castle was low. Even a top student like Hermione would still feel nervous when facing the exam. Even after the exam, Hermione would still annoyedly mutter that she didn't need to remember certain knowledge points at all. Of course, in the eyes of others, it is hard to say whether Hermione's behavior is nervousness or Versailles. In this final exam, apart from the little badgers who are always playing badly, the two who feel the most relaxed are probably Lin and Irina. The two of them, whose combat power is comparable to that of Aura's, naturally passed the childish test of the first and second grade wizard final exam easily. However, Irina was not sure that she could surpass Hermione in terms of scores. Like Lin, she is also a student with a partiality for subjects. She is also not very talented in courses such as potions. In this way, she will definitely not be able to compare with Hermione, who is excellent in all subjects. Among the required courses, defense against the dark arts, transfiguration, charms, herbology, and history of magic are her strengths, while potions is her weakness, which complements Lin. After the tense atmosphere of the final exams, Harry and others finally had the leisure to think about the protection of the Philosopher's Stone. At this moment, Harry suddenly discovered an extremely serious problem. Everyone, I found something wrong. Do you think that the person who brought Hagrid the dragon egg could have deliberately contacted him? Harry said seriously to Irina and the other two. Irina nodded slightly. It seems that Harry is still a bit smart. Hermione's eyes became serious, and she said, I understand. Let's go to Hagrid and ask him. So the four of them left Hogwarts Castle in a swift and decisive manner, and ran across the lawn towards the Forbidden Forest. At this time, Hagrid was sitting on a chair outside his hut, shelling peas. Hagrid smiled when he saw Irina and the other three people coming. Hello, are the exams over? Would you like a cup of tea? Yes, thanks. Ron was about to agree, but was interrupted by Harry. Harry asked anxiously, no, we are in a hurry. Hagrid, I have something to ask you. Do you remember the night you won the dragon egg playing cards? What did the stranger you played cards with look like? I don't know, Hagrid said nonchalantly, completely unaware of what he had done. He refused to take off his cloak. Harry, Ron and Hermione all showed astonishment. Seeing this, Hagrid looked at everyone with strange eyes and said, what's so strange about this? The Hogshead Bar is always frequented by some strange people. Maybe that guy's a smuggler who wrestles dragons. Before Hagrid finished speaking, Irina went straight to the point. Hagrid, have you ever told that person about the three-headed dog? Hearing this, Hagrid pondered for a while, nodded, and said, it seems that he did. I want his dragon egg, but he said he must find out whether I can deal with a dragon. So I told him that I can even deal with Fluffy, and a dragon is nothing. What else did he ask? Is he curious about Fluffy? Irina asked calmly. Hagrid thought for a while and continued, he is indeed very curious, so he asked me how I did it. I told him that Fluffy is actually very easy to deal with. You just need to know how to calm it down and play some music for it, and it will fall asleep immediately. Irina was speechless. I think you, Hagrid, are not grown up by taking truth serum. You may have transformed into a human after taking truth serum, right? Exclamation mark. At this moment, Hagrid seemed to realize that he had said something he shouldn't have said, and suddenly showed a horrified expression. I shouldn't have told you this. Forget what I said. Hey, where are you going? Harry had already taken the lead and ran towards the direction of Hogwarts Castle, followed by Ron and Hermione. Although Irina was a little helpless, she had to follow them. Actually, Harry, you don't have to be so anxious. Without you, Voldemort can't get the Philosopher's Stone. In the entrance hall of the castle, Harry and others found Professor McGonagall passing by. Hermione hurriedly stepped forward and said to Professor McGonagall, Professor, we want to see Professor Dumbledore. Want to see Professor Dumbledore? Professor McGonagall was a little confused. Why? Harry subconsciously said, this is a secret. Hearing this, Professor McGonagall's face turned cold. She said coldly, Professor Dumbledore left 10 minutes ago. He received an urgent letter from the Ministry of Magic sent by Owl and flew to London immediately. Just when Harry was anxious and threw his vigilance to the wind and was about to speak desperately, Irina grabbed him. "Sorry, Professor, we are abrupt. We will leave immediately." Irina apologized to Professor McGonagall, then winked at Hermione, and the two of them dragged Harry out of the hallway. After Professor McGonagall disappeared from sight, Irina finally breathed a sigh of relief and let Harry go. Harry was very angry at this time. He questioned Irina. "Irina, what are you doing? What if the Philosopher's Stone is stolen? If you don't tell Professor McGonagall about it?" "Harry, calm down first," Irina said lightly. "Use your head to think about it. Do you think Professor McGonagall will believe that someone stole the Philosopher's Stone?" Harry was choked up. Harry was a little upset. Originally, we only needed to monitor Snape and stop him from stealing the Philosopher's Stone, but the Forbidden Forest incident ruled him out as a suspect, and now we don't even have a single person to monitor. Irina said softly, "But even if we have such a goal, with our magic level, how can you guarantee that our monitoring will not be discovered? If we are discovered by that villain, I'm afraid he will be more cautious and steal the Philosopher's Stone without anyone noticing. There is no other way." Harry was desperate. "I will sneak out of here tonight. I will try to get the Philosopher's Stone first, so that Voldemort can't get the Philosopher's Stone." Ron exclaimed, "You are crazy." Hermione was also incredulous. "You can't do this. You will be expelled." Harry roared angrily, analyzing the interests of this matter. In the end, Ron and Hermione were convinced by him. Irina also agreed to do so. Although Harry's behavior was suspected of sending a head 1,000 miles away, and the gift was light, but the sentiment was heavy. Only by beating Voldemort back to the state of a residual soul in this incident could they live in peace for the next 2 school years. Otherwise, if Voldemort continued to attach to Quirrell and left, then Voldemort, who had a wizard body, even if he was just possessed, could make full use of the Death Eaters who were still active to stir up a huge storm. Chapter 74 Keeluo exploded again. At night, Harry and his 3 companions came to the Gryffindor common room quietly and met Neville, who had the courage to stop the 4 from violating the school rules. Hermione used the full body binding spell to control Neville in a hurry and then took the 3 of them out of the Gryffindor common room. On the way to the 4th floor, they also met Peeves. Fortunately, Harry disguised himself as the Bloody Baron and scared him away. It took only a few minutes for the 4 of them to arrive outside the corridor on the 4th floor. Harry looked at the door and felt a shudder in his heart. The door had been opened a crack, and it was obvious that they were late. "It seems that the villain has passed Fluffy. We have to speed up and try to stop him before he takes the Philosopher's Stone," Harry said anxiously. The 4 of them also quickened their pace, and Harry pushed the door open. This door was really old. When Harry pushed it open, it kept making a creaking noise, and this noise actually woke up Fluffy, the 3-headed dog. "Fly the harp." Irina saw a harp at Fluffy's feet. She quickly waved her wand and cast a flying spell to summon the harp into her hand. Irina quickly played the harp. Although her musical skills were not very strong, it was at least music. As the melodious sound of the harp rang out, Fluffy's eyelids drooped, his body swayed, and he fell to the floor again with a plop, falling into a deep sleep. Although Fluffy fell asleep, Irina did not stop playing the harp. She used her eyes to signal the 3 of them to enter the trapdoor quickly. Harry looked at the bottomless hole inside the trapdoor. He was a little scared, but he didn't have time to think too much. He closed his eyes and jumped down. Ron and Hermione followed closely behind. While playing the harp, Irina came to the trapdoor. She threw the harp and jumped into it. Fluffy woke up outside the trapdoor, but his huge body could not chase the 4 people at all, so he could only rage helplessly outside. At this moment, another figure appeared at the door of the room. "Has it started? How can a bug living in the gutter be worthy of defiling the master's work?" Lin En walked slowly towards the trapdoor. Dozens of alchemical floating cannons have appeared around him, floating around. The golden luster flashing on these alchemical floating cannons shows that they have completed charging. The 3-headed dog Luwei in the room noticed Lin En's presence, and it roared and wanted to tear the intruder Lin En into pieces. Seeing this, Lin En gently waved his right hand holding the magic wand, and a purple beam burst out, instantly knocking the huge 3-headed dog several meters away. Luwen's body fell heavily to the ground and fainted. Lin En loosened his left hand, and in the palm of his metal glove, a magic crystal used to store magic power lost its original luster and dimmed. This glove was a temporary equipment he made, which could serve as a bridge connecting Lin En and the magic products of the outside world, absorbing the magic power of the magic crystal for his own use. Although this was made by Lin En according to the template of the Infinity Gauntlet, its function is very simple and single. It has no effect, except absorbing external energy to supply Lin En, and it cannot even be equipped with a power crystal to increase Lin En's power. Lin En understood that in the next stage of facing Voldemort directly, the other party would never hold back, so he had to increase the power of his spell, and borrowing the energy of external objects was a good way. Although only one's own power is one's own, there is also an old saying, that a gentleman is not born different, but is good at borrowing from things. The reason why Lin En, who had just cast a spell silently, was able to knock down the three-headed dog Lu Wei and make him unconscious was because he borrowed the magic power of the magic crystal in his hand. Lin En casually discarded the magic crystal that had run out of magic power and then put a layer of phantom magic on himself and the surrounding alchemical floating guns and went towards the direction of the trapdoor. At the same time, in the last room, Quirrell broke through the flames and walked into this room. Not far from him, there was a tall mirror, which was the mirror of Erized. This mirror is the key to find the Philosopher's Stone. Quirrell muttered to himself, only Dumbledore can come up with such a thing. Quirrell cast his eyes on the mirror of Erized, and in the scene presented by the mirror of Erized, he saw the Philosopher's Stone. I saw the Philosopher's Stone, and I'm offering it to my master. But where is it? Looking at the mirror of Erized, Quirrell was a little confused. At this time, Voldemort behind Quirrell's head spoke, this is an alchemical product. Maybe the Philosopher's Stone is in it. Otherwise, there is nothing else in this room. Master, Quirrell said respectfully, then how can we get it? Voldemort pondered for a while and said, perhaps you need to express your desire for the Philosopher's Stone to it, and it will give it to you. Quirrell nodded and looked at the mirror of Erized again. I need the Philosopher's Stone. I want to offer it to my master and revive my master. Quirrell stared at himself holding the Philosopher's Stone in the mirror of Erized, muttering to himself. At this moment, Quirrell found that the self in the mirror of Erized smiled and took out a bright red stone from his pocket, which was the Philosopher's Stone, and then put it back into his pocket. At the same time, Quirrell felt that a heavy object had really fallen into his pocket. Quirrell showed a look of surprise and quickly reached out and took out the heavy object from his pocket. However, the appearance of this object was beyond Quirrell's expectations. It was a round pineapple-shaped object, and a part on its top seemed to have been removed and was smoking. Master, this doesn't seem to be the Philosopher's Stone. Quirrell fiddled with the round pineapple-shaped object in confusion and said to Voldemort at the back of his head. Sensing the magic fluctuations brought by the faint and familiar alchemical array from the round pineapple-shaped object, Voldemort felt that he was going crazy. Waste, you have been deceived. Throw it away quickly. Now. Right now. Voldemort roared wildly, and his anger made Quirrell feel that his head was about to explode with pain. Without hesitation, Quirrell threw the round pineapple-shaped object in his hand. However, as soon as the MK2 grenade left his hand, a violent explosion occurred. The familiar airwave swept the fragments of the MK2 grenade and destroyed Quirrell's body. If Quirrell was not a wizard with extremely strong magic to nourish his body, he would have been killed in an instant as an ordinary person facing the explosion of the MK2 grenade at a distance of less than 1 meter, especially the explosion of the MK2 grenade enchanted by the alchemy array. Thanks to the book friend Tiger who loves steak for the 100 book coins reward. Thank you for your support. Our book will be recommended in the second round this Sunday. After 150,000 words, I finally recommend it. I'm so moved. In short, I hope everyone can vote more this Sunday, and those who are able to do so can also ask for a reward. Thank you all. Chapter 75. Violent Breakthrough. But even if Quirrell was not killed by the MK2 grenade, he had already fallen to the ground, breathing out more than breathing in. Quirrell's body was full of shrapnel, and the front of his skin was covered with burn marks, looking like a charred coal. Waste. Waste. Voldemort roared, constantly punishing Quirrell with magic, which made Quirrell dizzy with pain. But soon, Quirrell's eyes rolled up, and his eyes looked much weirder. Obviously, this was Voldemort taking control of Quirrell's body again. Voldemort controlled Quirrell to wave his wand, cast several healing spells on himself in succession, and used a powerful vanishing spell to accurately make the shrapnel on his body disappear. It was not until this moment that Quirrell successfully stood up. Fortunately, this is a magical world, and the magic of magic can heal all physical injuries. Otherwise, even if Quirrell did not die, he would definitely be close to death. Damn it, this body is so weak. Just a few powerful healing spells and vanishing spells have consumed 30% of the magic power. Voldemort cursed inwardly and returned the control of his body to Quirrell. At this time, Quirrell wanted to cry, but had no tears. He had obviously done everything Voldemort said, but who knew that there would be such a dangerous situation in this magic mirror? Exclamation mark. Keep thinking of a way. If you can't get the Philosopher's Stone, you will have a hard time, Voldemort said viciously. Hearing this, Quirrell shuddered violently. He still remembered the scene when he was punished by Voldemort with a Cruciatus curse on the back of his head because he did not do a good job in something. That was really a dilemma. Thinking of this, Quirrell hurriedly circled around the mirror of their eyes, looking for a way to crack it. On the other side, Irina and the other four fell on a devil's net, and the vines of the devil's net entangled their bodies. Flames. Although Harry's magic level was not high, under Irina's influence, he immediately thought of the fire spell. Sure enough, when encountering something as bright and warm as fire, the devil's snare kept retreating, loosening its entanglement with the four people, and the four people also seized the opportunity to break free from control and came to a stone corridor. Irina chanted a spell to extinguish the flames, and then walked forward with Harry and the other two along the stone corridor. This corridor was like the underground passage of Gringotts, and it also went down all the way. Irina felt that the altitude she was at was probably lower than the Slytherin common room. After walking for a few minutes, they came to the end of the corridor, and in front of them was a brightly lit room, with countless birds as dazzling as gems flying in the air, and opposite the room was a heavy wooden door. Irina looked closely, and found that these things were not birds at all, but keys one after another. Obviously, one of these keys was the key to open this door. Spell stop. Irina waved her wand, and a strange wave of magic spread from her wand. Clank, clank. Nearly 1/3 of the keys fell to the ground under the effect of this universal decryption spell, but the remaining keys seemed to be under a powerful spell, and were not affected by Irina's magic. However, after eliminating 1/3 of the interference items, the remaining keys also became clear at a glance. Look, it should be the key. Harry, it's up to you. At this time, Hermione pointed to a silver key with drooping blue wings among the keys. Harry saw a row of flying brooms in the corner of the wall. He rode on one of the brooms without hesitation, and chased in the direction of the key. With Harry's quality as a seeker for the Gryffindor Quidditch team, it was naturally not difficult to catch a key. In just a few breaths, Harry jumped off the broom with the key. Hurry, Harry! Ron shouted. Harry quickly came to the heavy door, inserted the key, and twisted it hard. With a click sound, the heavy door was opened. But at the same time, the group of keys behind seemed to go crazy, and they turned into sharp blades and shot towards everyone. Protect everyone. Irina flicked her wand, and an invisible barrier blocked everyone, covering them through the door. In this way, the four people successfully came to the second room. When they came to this room, they found themselves at the edge of a huge chessboard. There were black chess pieces in front, but each of these chess pieces was as tall as the knight's armor in the castle. There were some white chess pieces at the other end of the room. These terrifying chess pieces made Harry and Ron shudder. Does it mean that we have to act as these chess pieces, and can only enter the next room after winning? Ron looked at the missing chess pieces in the chess formation and said so. Harry was a little anxious, but the villain has passed this room. I'm afraid we won't be able to finish this game of chess before he gets the Philosopher's Stone. Well, Irina sighed and stepped forward. Then just get rid of these chess pieces that are blocking the way and rush into the next room. Hearing this, Hermione walked to Irina's side without hesitation. But Harry and Ron were a little hesitant. Their magic level was not strong, and they were not sure of defeating these tall chess pieces. Thunder explosion. At this time, Hermione took the lead. She waved her wand and a beam of light broke through the air and bombarded the Black Knight not far away. Boom. The explosion sounded, and the Black Knight was instantly blown into rubble all over the ground. After discovering that Irina and her group were not going to abide by the rules, the chess pieces also began to move. 16 black pawns and 16 white pawns rushed to the front quickly, with a black knight and 2 white knights on both sides, and 2 bishops and castles in black and white behind them. As for the black and white kings and queens at the end, these pawns formed a battle formation, and attacked Irina, and others with great killing intent. Shatter into pieces. Irina cast a freezing spell with her left hand, freezing a black pawn, and then a cutting spell, turning the black pawn, that had been frozen into an ice sculpture into ice slag all over the ground. Faint. All petrified. If Irina's spells were mostly lethal spells, then Hermione's spells were mainly controlling. Hermione's understanding of herself was very correct. She knew that with her magic reserve, she might have to use it up before killing these pawns. Therefore, she planned to do her best to delay the speed of these pawns, so that Irina would have enough time to shoot them. As for Harry and Ron at the back, they harassed the chess pieces, setting a fire from time to time, and casting spells at the king and queen from time to time, forcing some pawns to retreat and defend. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.